I think we're missing Linda.
Okay. Chance to do one more thing.
Are we waiting for Mr. Hanley? He's the empty chair. It's being Clint Eastwood tonight.
He's coming back.
He said he needed 5 minutes.
Okay.
My eyes are bugging me. Okay.
Okay, I'm back. So we got everybody.
Yes.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to 2022. I hope everybody had a good holiday break and a good Martin Luther King Day. We'll open our meeting here. If I could just have, let me open by first having the Pledge of Allegiance. Could Dr. Skelly lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have our Spanish language interpreter for the meeting this evening, Enrique Montaldo. For those of you who would like to attend the meeting in Spanish, that option is available. Enrique, would you go ahead, please communicate that for this evening?
Buenas noches, tenemos a nuestro intérprete de español para la reunión de esta noche. Para aquellos de ustedes que quieran asistir a la reunión en español, esta opción está disponible. Muchas gracias.
Great, thank you very much. If you wish to view closed caption of this meeting, please view the meeting on the SMUHSD board meeting. You can on the YouTube channel, on our YouTube channel. The link to the YouTube channel can be found on our website. You may view the captions in English as we live stream our meeting tonight, and you can view the captions in a variety of other languages if you choose to watch after the meeting has ended. And if you have any other need for additional accommodations, please call 650-558-2201. In closed session today, let me report out some actions taken by the board. In closed session, the board, upon motion of Trustee Land and seconded by Trustee Andre Zuniga, moved to approve a special education settlement with a vote of 5-0. The board also, on the motion of Trustee Lee Dwyer and seconded by Trustee Griffin, approved a stipulated expulsion by a vote of 5-0. In closed session, the board, upon a motion of Trustee Land and seconded by Trustee Lee Dwyer, approved to postpone the expulsion hearing of one case with a vote of 5-0. So this is a public meeting of the San Mateo Union High School District Board of Trustees. If you wish to make a comment about an agenda item or during the public comment section of the open session agenda, please send an email to at SMUHSD.org with your name, your email address, and your Zoom name if it's different prior to the introduction of the item you wish to comment on. The board president will call on you. Please note the comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending upon the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. Tonight, we have quite a few public comments on a number of different items, and we're going to ask you to limit them to 2 minutes tonight. So, do we have some, we do have some public comments. That we've received for general public comment. I think,
Ms. Chalkley,
We have a number, and I'm going to bring them in 2 at a time. So right now you have Danielle Kellner, and then you have Laura Makrowitz. So they've both been promoted, and so Danielle is first.
okay. Please go ahead. You have 2
Hi.
minutes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. The topic tonight seems like it's going to be safety in our classrooms and how the board and district office are failing to provide teachers, staff, and students with a safe learning environment. That's not terribly surprising to me. I worked as a teacher in this district for 4 years. While employed here, I repeatedly begged anyone that would listen to remove violent students from my classroom. Students who physically threatened me and repeatedly called me a fucking bitch while I was visibly pregnant. Absolutely none of you helped me. It was obvious that my safety and the safety of my unborn child were of no concern to anyone. Dr. Skelly, do you remember when I sat in your office and cried while asking you for protection when I was 8 months pregnant? I do. Your suggestion to me was to find another job. It is unsurprising then that this abject failure to protect us and the lack of concern for our safety is persisting during the pandemic. It is also obvious that this lack of protection is a pattern. With no sense of irony, this board has spent the last several years in legal battle, desperately fighting on behalf of Superintendent Skelly, HR Director Kirk Black, and Principal Pam Dazinski, and now Principal Ron Campana, for leaving violent students in their classrooms. In protecting those who have not protected us, this board and district office is saying that teacher safety does not matter. In a stunning show of support, this board voted to rehire all of these people and give them raises while simultaneously paying their legal bills with district money. Money that could have easily gone to supplying PPE and testing for everyone in your district. This district office, at least 2 principals, and the board of trustees have joined together to protect each other while actively creating unsafe working and learning conditions for everyone else. All of you have shown no empathy and no decency. In addition, there seems to have been absolutely no forethought or basic care.
If you could wrap up your
protect
remarks.
our teachers, staff, and students as we enter the 3rd year of this pandemic. It is obvious that all of you are in over your heads. You have clearly not lived up to your own mission statements, and you should
Please
all
wrap
be
up your
ashamed of
remarks.
yourselves. I urge you all, especially Trustee Hanley, to resign. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have the next speaker?
Hmm.
We have Laura Makrowitz.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am speaking as a parent of an alumni for Peninsula High School. Our child was presented an option of attending Peninsula when their homeschool failed to be there for them, and it was not what they wanted. As parents, We were trying our best to help them get through and find their footing. Peninsula was there for them. I don't think they realized the impact that Peninsula really had on them, but we saw it as parents. They became more engaging, both in class and at home. With the arrival of Hamilton, they became more enthusiastic about history and brought that energy to class. On career days, my husband helped out by talking about careers in the electricians union, as well as opportunities at SFO. We tried to participate as best we could. We demonstrated and then even taught our child's class how to fence. Our child had accomplished quite a few things at Peninsula. They helped start the Pen House, which is a chill zone where a student, if they were doing well, they could chill inside during free time or lunch. They painted the new banner for Peninsula. They excelled in attendance. They received the merit roll for getting a 4.0. They even got early acceptance to AAU in San Francisco, where they are currently enrolled in the acting division. You have been given a list of grievances by the staff, the administrative team, and the students that you have all ignored. You need to treat this school, the students, and the faculty with the same equality and respect that you show to the other schools in this district. These kids are talented, they're bright, they're inspiring individuals. They are our future and should be given that dignity, respect, and the opportunities you afford the other students and schools in your district. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. We have another speaker.
Yes, Franco's Scatallon.
Sakdalan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm a student at Peninsula High School, and I'll tell you right now that I was hesitant of coming to Peninsula because of what I've heard about it and because of what people have told me about it. But then from day one, since I came to Peninsula, like, it changed my life, and I probably wouldn't even be here right now if it wasn't for the staff and the teachers who helped me who I am today. And they've helped me achieve a lot of stuff, and they give us a lot of help and resources, but I feel like they also need they need resources that they were not given, and the school or the board didn't provide for them. Just like, I don't know, like more counselors or like a space for offices, because in our school they've used cupboards as offices for some of our staff, and I feel like we just for them to help us better, I feel like they need their own spaces where they can work on stuff. And Peninsula High School like really helped me achieve a lot of stuff and helped me get through a lot of stuff personally and academically inside and outside of school.
Thank you for your remarks.
Next, we have Zoe Steinberger, and then I'm going to bring in Rachel Lauderdale.
Good evening, Superintendent Skelly, esteemed board members, staff, parents, students, and community members. My name is Zoe Steinberger, and I am a senior at Burlingame High School. I would like to begin by saying that I am in favor of implementing the proposed racial equity policy, and I believe it is the next step in creating a safe and welcoming school district for all students, staff, and families. Tonight, though, I would like to speak about the COVID protocols in the school. Yesterday, my friend missed first and third period waiting in line to receive a COVID test at BHS. We currently have one person available to perform COVID tests, forcing students who have been exposed to COVID to wait in line for hours on end and then attend classes while they wait for their results, which may be positive, putting their classmates at risk. Furthermore, although I'm very thankful that the district provided students with K95 masks, each student received one individual mask, which lasted for 2 to 3 days before they became dirty and we disposed of them, forcing us to resort to our cloth or surgical masks, which do not offer as much protection as K95 masks. At lunch, there is no space to social distance. In classrooms, we share materials at group workstations. In the hallways, the arrows on the floor to show which way to walk are wearing away. The rules in our schools are not being enforced and are not being communicated to our students. Our district should be doing more, including setting an example for our students. Later tonight, you will be discussing item J19, which states that due to health risks posed by COVID, the board meetings will continue to take place online. I would like to remind you that while you are all safe in the comfort of your own homes, your students are in contact with COVID daily, in person at school. Last year online was crazy for us, and in no way am I suggesting that we go back online. But as we sit on another Zoom board meeting, the only thing I can think of is that this virus is dangerous enough to where 8 vaccinated and masked adults cannot meet in person, yet 8,000 students, vaccinated and unvaccinated, and 800 faculty members can. By continuing virtually, you, the leadership of the district, are setting the example that it is unsafe to be meeting in person, and we should stay online. I urge you to devote more of your resources to keeping those who you put
Could
at
you
risk safe.
wrap up your remarks?
Thank you, and I hope to see you all in person at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Next, we have Rachel Lauderdale, and then I'm bringing in Craig Childress.
Hello, President Hanley, Board of Trustees, district leaders, and community members. I would like to comment on 2 issues that are incredibly important to the health and safety of our students, educators, and community. First, I would like to commend Sarah Devaney and her team's work to get us through this insane surge in COVID-19 infections. They are working tirelessly while very short-handed to ensure our safety. I appreciate the district's purchase of proper masks for our students, but we still need more measures in place to make sure we are safe. To prioritize safety in the district needs to regularly provide KN95 masks that wrap around person's ears to all students across the district. Currently, the masks wrap around the head and very few students want to wear them. We need to provide regular and mandatory testing for all students with a schedule that makes sense for each school site so students are not out of class for too long. We need to go back to contact tracing so students and teachers are aware of contacts. We need to hire more support staff for testing and contact tracing. We need to provide, and most importantly, we need to provide 10 days of sick leave for any person infected with coronavirus. Research shows that this is one of the most effective ways to curb the spread of the virus. We must follow the direction of districts like San Mateo Foster City and San Francisco Unified. Secondly, I would like to stand in solidarity with Peninsula High School. Soon you will hear from Caroline Weiscarver as she uses our association time to speak on the equity issues at Peninsula. I appreciate the district has attempted to find temporary issues like hiring a social worker and that they acknowledge that this is only a temporary solution. We must find permanent solutions to the funding and other equity issues that you will hear about soon. Title I and ELO funding is not good enough to provide Peninsula students with what they need. We hope that you will pay special attention to the historical cultural issues that Peninsula faces and not ignore their pleas. The staff at Peninsula supports our students who our systems has failed. As they will mention, if we as a district really care about creating equitable opportunities, we must put Peninsula students in education at the forefront of the conversation and not at an afterthought. Peninsula staff provide hope.
Please wrap up your remarks.
Of course, Peninsula staff provide hope and love to our students who need it most. Our association stands with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Christy Ricci.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Peninsula High School's resource allocation. I actually addressed this board almost 1 year ago as a parent of a Peninsula High School student. And I am unhappy to learn that the resources Peninsula has asked for and needs have not been granted. The argument that the decision not to deliver those resources is based on the number of students is counterproductive. It's a school created and designed to serve marginalized and vulnerable high school children that for many reasons would otherwise fall through the cracks at the other 6 comprehensive schools. This smaller community is necessary to address the unique and varied needs of its students, yet is challenged to do so because it's told it's too small to justify receiving the necessary resources. To deny Peninsula the same resources afforded the other 6 schools is setting it up for failure. Peninsula needs to be on equal footing as the other schools to be successful. The staff are spread very thin and wear many hats compared to their counterparts, yet they are told they have to choose between a student success coordinator or a social worker, and that they can't have both as the other schools have. They desperately need these resources, even more so, in order to do what the school is designed to do. Other than the staff, no one is championing on behalf of this small community. The district says its mission is to challenge and motivate each student to achieve their full potential as a responsible member of the diverse community in a safe learning environment that promotes intellectual growth, health, creativity, and respect for self and others. I ask you, how can this be achieved at any school, especially Peninsula, without the necessary resources to support it? If you choose to deny the resources to Peninsula, you are denying the needs of the children who attend. These kids are equal members of our community and district as much as the kids at the other schools are. Please grant Peninsula High School's request for more resources. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Candace Thomas.
Hello, my name is Candace Thomas. I'm a teacher at Hillsdale High School, and I just have a few questions for the board that I hope they will answer. The first is, why do we not have opt-out testing? Right now, students can opt into testing, but that is not good enough. Dr. Skelly said in the email that we should be operating as if we are always being exposed to COVID at all times. Doesn't this mean that every student in our district should be getting tested weekly? Second, contact tracing is not happening. The only way I know that a student has COVID is if the student or their parents contact me. 2 students that were in my classroom had a COVID last week. Just got an email from a student yesterday that had COVID, was in my classroom. Not an email, a text message, a voicemail, nothing from my site, nothing from the district. This is unacceptable. Third, will the board agree to paid COVID sick days if the California legislature reinstates the funds needed to do so? Fourth, the board says that an in-person school board meeting poses imminent risk to the health and safety of attendees. So y'all can sit at home and have this board meeting, but thousands of students and hundreds of teachers have to be in a school building 5 days a week for 8 hours a day, and y'all can't come in once a week for a school board meeting. I'm calling bull crap on that. Are school sites required to track the demographics of students missing 5 to 10 days of class at a time? Are we looking for any trends or patterns of students who are catching or being exposed to COVID? Will school sites be required to come up with a plan for students who miss school due to quarantine? Are any schools having a disproportionate number of positive cases? If so, are we working to find out why? And lastly, is it possible to host a vaccine clinic at school during school hours? Could parents make an appointment for their students to get their booster or their first or second dose? Those are the questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and your questions.
Those are Candace was the last of our public speakers for tonight.
Great, thank you. Moving on to item H, communications to the Board of Trustees. We do not have any this evening. Let's move forward to recognition. We have 2 recognition items this evening. The first is sports team recognition, the Aragon Football 2021 CCS champions.
Thank you very much. This is, and I will be promoting a variety of folks here, student athletes and football coach at Aragon, Steve Sell, perhaps other assistant coaches. The Aragon football team won the CCS Central Coast Section Championship in 2021. It's been our tradition to bring those teams to board meetings to be recognized. It's not the equivalent of going to the White House for recognition, but nonetheless, we're proud of these students. They did a great job this season. Coach Sell will say a very few words about them. And then we just want to recognize them. And then we have 2 other items as we go forward here. So we'll keep promoting, but I'll give Coach Sell the opportunity to say a few words about your team.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Skelly. Just wanted, before we talk about football, I just want to recognize 2 people that have announced their retirement. I hope I'm not saying anything prematurely. Then I would hope to be able to speak about them at a later time. Dr. Skelly, we're talking about football like the Gale Sayers of our school district, in the sense that you weren't here, you're only here for about 6 or 7 years like Gale Sayers, but the impact you had was enormous. And, like I said, I hope to be able to recognize you at a later date. But thank you very much and talk to the other athletic directors. The things you have done in support of athletics have been much appreciated and significant. And if Dr. Skelly is Gail Sayers, Barb Tufo is Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig Barb Tufo was here when I started as an athletic director in 1996. And before that, and working with Kirk Black and others as the liaison with the athletic directors. And she's heard every bad joke, every complaint, everything athletic directors have ever said. And Barb Tufo is an absolute jewel to the district, and she will be missed. So I just wanted to recognize those two people before we start. Thank you very much for this recognition, for the kind words. I can't say enough about our football team. This was a team in 2019 that won one game and had a rough go of it. And the kids we have a few kids, a lot of kids who were part of the program during that year, and they hung in there and they stuck with it and they trusted us, and they got rewarded by winning a CCS championship this year, not to mention going through COVID and everything that all the kids in our school district had to go through. And so, coaches always say that they absolutely love their players, but that word gets used a lot with this group of kids. They're just exceptional people and just a joy to be around all the time. I still love seeing them in the hall. So I cannot thank them enough and compliment them enough for the type of football players they are and the type of people they are. And also I'd like to thank my coaching staff. Very, very fortunate to be with such a great group of people who are dedicated to making these kids better people and better players. They work very, very hard. Most of them are products of the school district, graduates of this school system. And some of the school board, and I think Julia Kempton, whoever was the one that came out, developed the idea for the student success coordinator, Ashley Parham, who's on here as my assistant head coach. Now, some of the things the district has done to support the academics of these kids is being shown in the CCS championship. And we would not be here without some of those efforts and the effort and the adjustments you made, for lack of a better term, to what the kids were going through during COVID. But again, I mean, that's I suppose I will get credit as the head coach for being the head coach of this team, but this is definitely a shared honor with a bunch of great coaches who love our kids and work hard for our kids, and also our administration. Valerie, you only had to wait 2 years for your first CCS championship, so congratulations. And again, our support at the school level is terrific also.
Thank you very much, Coach Sell. Can we go? I think we should go next to our next recognition. We want to recognize tonight Ed Roberts. He was an alumni of Burlingame High School and a leader in the work to create a world that is more inclusive to people with disabilities. He was known as the father of independent living. He was a trailblazing advocate for people with disabilities. Paralyzed by polio as a child, Roberts was considered unemployable by the California Department of Rehabilitation, a prejudiced decision he successfully fought to overturn. Roberts graduated, as I mentioned, from Burlingame High School and then the College of San Mateo. He attended the University of California, Berkeley, becoming the first severely disabled student to be admitted. That's where he began his lifelong work as an advocate fighting for the rights of students like him. In 1972, Roberts founded UC Berkeley's Physically Disabled Students Program, creating a model for the Center for Independent Living and similar centers around the country. He was appointed by Governor Edmund G. Brown Jr. to lead the state's Department of Rehabilitation, which years earlier had found him unemployable. He served the state with distinction until 1983, when he founded the World Institute on Disability in Oakland. The Institute's pioneering work to help nationalize California's in-home support services by adding the home services option to Medicaid. In 2011, he was inducted in the California Hall of Fame in recognition for his leadership and advocacy on behalf of the disabled. We are honored to recognize Mr. Ed Roberts as a leader in the disability community and the movement worldwide, and a distinguished alumni of the district. And the date for Ed Roberts Day in the district is January 23rd. The third recognition that we want to do goes to the board. This is, folks out there may not realize it, but January is School Board Recognition Month. School Board Recognition Month, and we are glad to honor the board here with this resolution, and we appreciate your service. It's a lot of hard work, and many of you have been at it for a very long time, and our community is better for your service. That's the end of our recognitions.
Thank you. Are there any comments the board wishes to make? I think we actually need to approve the proclamation for Mr. Roberts.
I think you have Ms. Darlene Zuniga would like to make a comment, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to just, I guess, thank the district for doing the resolution for Ed Roberts Day. It's really important to recognize people that are in underserved and underrepresented communities like Ed Roberts. When I had my disability, people like examples like his and the independent living movement were what moved me to just get more involved in more public service, along with what I was doing before as an able-bodied person. And it made me really understand what people that I didn't really realize had such different issues change how I thought. And it really, especially with the biases that I had and things that I didn't even realize I was doing that were definitely ableistic, helped me see that side of life and of the world. So it's such a great thing to see this, especially in the schools, since disability history isn't really even included in US history yet. So I really, so thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the proclamation for Ed Roberts Day?
I'll make a motion to approve Ed Roberts Day resolution.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Trustee Land and a second by Trustee Zuniga. How do you vote, Trustee Griffin?
Aye.
Trustee Zuniga?
Yes.
Trustee Land?
I had my hand up too, so I'm just going to say something really briefly. I'll say it really quick, I promise. Just
please go ahead.
One, yes, I vote yes. But at two, I was really impressed to learn about Ed Roberts through this and did not know this. And I know where the picture's from. So I've been in that room many times, and to be able to see that is just impressive. So I really appreciate the staff and those who really advocated for this to make this happen, because it was a learning experience for me tonight. So I really appreciate it. And I hope we do more of this.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed your hand. Trustee Dwyer. How do you vote?
Yes. Oh, I said yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I vote yes. So it's the proclamation is approved 5-0. I think we also need to vote on, the school board proclamation also. Is that right, Dr. Skelly?
I believe that is, yes, sir.
My gosh, we have to. We're recognizing ourselves. Okay, fine. I make a motion to approve this.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion from trustee Land and a second from trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee Zuniga?
Yes, and I thanks everybody for, for their service. And I just want to say, I mean, we always have to do better. So just acknowledging that. I know we all work really hard, but there's always more. So thanks.
Trustee Land?
I'm just going to say yes, and it's not easy, but it's definitely worth it to try to make a difference. And as Lihia said, it's never enough. We've got to keep going. And I do recognize the comments, even though we're not allowed to comment on those comments. We hear you, and thank you for your public comments earlier.
Trustee Dwyer?
I agree, yes.
And I agree, yes, also. So
Trustee Hanley, I'm sorry, is the board going to get a chance to?
yes, I was just going to go back.
Thank you.
It's been a while since I've been president of the board, so I'm pretty rusty at this. So this is probably going to be a creaky exercise here tonight until I get, but yes, I skipped over the board public comment, the board's comments. So let me go, before we go on to the consent agenda, let me go back to governing board comments. Trustee Griffin, do you have any comments tonight?
Yeah, I got my hand up there, so a little brown hand there. But anyway, Peter, welcome
my
to the
screen. My screen at the top
Peter,
is cutting it off.
Peter, welcome to the presidency during COVID. So anyway, I participated, and I think Trustee Zuniga also participated in the unity in the community effort. And I think it was, and each one's different. And I think it was very productive in that it surfaced emotions and it surfaced candid feelings and some things, and some issues that we need to address with, as an area of concern with the community, which is pretty broad. It's a pretty broad constituency in that community. But anyway, I thought it was time well spent once again. I just wish we could get more people out there, and not necessarily, not even BIPOC people. Just get, I think it would be of interest to everybody, particularly given the direction of the district in terms of equity and awareness and some of the issues and challenges that we face. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Trustee Andre Zuniga.
Thank you. I wanted to first acknowledge that we are on the unceded land of the Ramaytush Ohlone people. I also wanted to recognize that January 27th is Holocaust Remembrance Day. And just in the recent disaster in Tonga, I wanted to keep everybody from Tonga in our, and everybody else that was affected from the volcano eruption underwater in our hearts and in our minds. There was a lot of disaster, and we need to support our brothers and sisters in other lands. And then we also have people in our community that are directly affected here as well. I do want to acknowledge that we have had a lot of people in our community that have been directly and indirectly affected by COVID. We do recognize that. And I am disappointed that we can't do more. I wish that there was more support also from our leadership in Sacramento. And it's a very difficult situation because we have so many different communities with different realities and lived experiences. And I just want to recognize everyone out there that has just situations in their family where they're immunocompromised, or they cannot quarantine for whatever reason, or cannot take time off of work. It's very hard, and I we hear you. but I just want you to know that you're supported and we are trying to do the best we can with what we have. And just remember that there are mobile vaccination opportunities and that there are other vaccination and testing opportunities throughout the community. I wanted to also say that everyone that spoke tonight on behalf of Peninsula High School is right. Peninsula High School is an amazing school site, and the administrators and teachers and support staff at that school are great. I have a direct family member that attends that school right now, and she has improved so much. So I'm very grateful. So I am grateful for everything everybody does, and you are seen. And I just want you to know that you are being heard. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Land?
So just a couple of things. One, I do appreciate, I know we're not supposed to comment on the agenda items, the talk that was from all the individuals earlier, but there were two themes that I think are important to touch base on that I was going to anyway. The first one is COVID. Being an administrator in a middle school, I know how complicated things are getting and all the rules that are changing in COVID in the health departments in both San Mateo and Santa Clara County and the state itself. I know that's not easy, and the changes with how many days for quarantining and are we going to go close contact and the changes that are making and the difficulties that are going on. I think we need to relook at our COVID protocols and how can we support students better? How can we support staff better and teachers? And I think it's something we need to look at. I think we've done a really good job, but I think we can do better. And I think we need to relook and self-reflect a little bit on how we can do it. The second thing I wanted to talk about was Peninsula High School. I know we've got a new location, and with that new location comes problems and things we have to work on. How are we going to support this wonderful, amazing program? I think we've heard tonight that there is much good that's taking place, but how can we support them in an equitable way so that they get the students there can get what they need? And I think that's important. And I think we have a lot to do in that area. So I hope that in our board meetings later on, when we talk about what's coming up, that Peninsula is going to be a topic of conversation and how can we get improvement on that. With that being said, thank you very much. And that's all I have to say for tonight.
Trustee Lee Swire?
Sorry that I coughed into my microphone. My apologies. I attended the meeting at Peninsula via Zoom regarding issues and concerns that they have, and I found it very enlightening. I also felt like I feel like we're talking about equity constantly, and it's such an important term, and it's so incredibly important, particularly at this time, that we address equity at all levels. And I relate to Peninsula in that regard, because I believe that we need to, as a district, as a board, look at the fact that we have 8 schools, not 6. We have 6 large high schools. We have a middle college program that has 2 locations, and we have Peninsula High School. So I think that we need to make sure that that's clear to everyone, that we support and are proud of all of our schools, all of our programs, that the same financial support and space and all of the things that teachers and students need to succeed are provided equally to all of our schools. And I think when I read the racial equity policy, and I think, racial equity is incredibly important. So is school to school equity. And I am very happy that we have opened up that conversation, that people are listening to the concerns of particularly Peninsula, that we're recognizing that no new building is perfect and we need to see what we can do, and that we are open to making changes. And I will be watching to make sure that we actually are making changes and not just talking about them, because it's easy to sit up here and talk, but it isn't easy to implement things. And so I'm really looking forward to the implementation of some changes at Peninsula that will make everything better for all of the population, student and staff. So thank you.
Thank you. I also attended the meeting at Peninsula that Trustee Lee Dwyer referred to, and have had several follow-up conversations with the superintendent about it. So I believe we're going to see some things achieved and some actions taken fairly quickly on what was discussed at Peninsula. Some things are going to take longer than others, but I think we are going to see some things come out of that reasonably quickly. I was also planning on going to the Unity in the Community meeting, but got detoured to the San Bruno City Council meeting where they were discussing Crestmore. So I'm going to have to make up the next meeting on Unity in the Community. I was sorry to miss it, but the council meeting in San Bruno was an important meeting for the district to have representation. I had a chance to visit San Mateo High School yesterday, which was really valuable for me to see how our students are doing and get a chance to walk around and at least talk briefly with a number of the teachers there. I think we're doing well under very difficult circumstances. As people have said, there's always room for improvement. But this is a very difficult time. And I think some of the things that we can do, we need to take, all possible steps that we can to get the education system back towards as close to normal as possible. I just think I think almost everybody else in education is just being brought to our knees and by this COVID situation. And it's, it's causing a lot of suffering. And you'll see, I think, as we've seen a report come out just in the last 10 days about the effect that it's having on academic learning. I think later in the evening, we're going to discuss some of the academic statistics in the district. It's clearly affecting you would almost expect that it would affect the academic outcomes in the district, what we've gone through in the last 18 months. But I really think we need a vaccine mandate. If we can't get a vaccine mandate, we at least have to be testing unvaccinated students on a really rigorous basis. We've got to do everything we can to reduce the risk of COVID and to try to move us back to a more normal education environment. Or I think we're just losing the battle to educate, and we're spending all of our time on trying to ameliorate COVID issues, and we're almost struggling. We're struggling mightily to deal with education, I think. So I really think we need to look at our protocols, look at what we can do in terms of getting more immunity into the district. And I think immunity ultimately means vaccination, but at least we ought to be testing unvaccinated students on a rigorous basis. And my last comment is just to recognize the retirement of Dr. Skelly, and we'll be talking more in the next 5 months or so. But certainly his achievements have been significant. I think some of my remarks were captured in the Daily Journal article. But they, I think one of the most significant achievements that we've made under Dr. Skelly has been the passage of the Measure L bond, which is going to exist far beyond his tenure here, and is going to deliver a lot of progress in the district and in improving our facilities, improving the environment for students and teachers. And so I just want to recognize that we have a big job to do in the next 5 months to fill that slot. But I want to recognize that he's made significant contributions to the district. Okay, moving to the consent agenda. There are 2 items that I know that we want to pull. We are pulling J22, then the staff will bring back J22 at the next meeting. It's not quite ready for prime time right now. And we are pulling J17, the Racial Equity Board Policy and Administrative Regulations, because there are a number of requests for public comment on that item. So we are pulling that one off, and we will take public comment on that item. Are there any other items that any of the board members wish to pull on the consent agenda?
I'd just like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda, less the 2 items you mentioned.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Oh.
So go ahead. I have a question.
Okay, first we have a motion from Trustee Land, and second by Trustee Griffin. There's a question from.
Yeah, it's on the contracts, and it doesn't require that they be pulled, that anything be pulled. There's some N95 masks that we're showing as general fund, and I think COVID-19. Do we still have CARES money or whatever money, and is that buying these masks?
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes. Trustee Griffin, we have in-person instruction, the IPI funds that are paying for these. They're not the CARES funds, those were spent up, but this relates to state funding around AB 86 last spring. We don't have a ton of that money left over. That's paying for a lot of our additional health aids, testing, masks, et cetera. So we likely will run through that within this semester. But as of right now, yes, it is being covered by those AB 86 IPI in-person instruction grant funds.
Thank you.
Ms. Dwyer, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I'll take a vote. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote on the consent agenda, minus the 2 items?
Yes.
Trustee Andre Zuniga? I think that was a yes.
Yes, sorry.
Trustee Land?
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so it passes 5-0. Going back to J17, let me just pull it up here. The Racial Equity Board Policy and Administrative Regulations. We did have a discussion of this at the December board meeting. Shall we proceed with the public comments?
I think that's fine. I don't know, Dr. Kemke, if you want to go before the comments, or I'll wait till we hear from the public?
What is the board's preference?
I think we should hear from the public first, and then we can make comments, and Dr. Kemke can make her words too.
Okay.
Our first two public speakers are Cecilia Lunapara and Callie Palma, and they've both been promoted.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Skelly, and all attendees. I am Cecilia Luna Parra, a BHS class of 2020 alum and second-year UC Berkeley student. I am here to express my support for the board's racial equity plan and to urge the board to pass it unanimously in solidarity with the Black, Indigenous, and people of color in SMUHSD's community. I attended Burlingame High School for 4 years, where I witnessed countless numbers of racial injustices, from passive microaggressions to deliberate negligence and institutional failures by administration. As a senior, I saw my school become the site of a visible hate crime with racist, anti-Semitic, and homophobic slurs written all over the walls. And I saw my administration fail to acknowledge the school's institutional role. While I regret acting as a bystander in many of these situations, I also have become aware that the continuous racism and inequities that I experienced and witnessed at BHS is structural, as the result of centuries of white supremacist motives, policies, and undertones. Therefore, it is those same institutions, including the district, that must pass policy designed to reverse these purposefully designed inequalities. While many have attempted to disparage this policy, this criticism largely comes from both a place of privilege and a misunderstanding of the pervasiveness of racism in our district. As a queer Mexican-American woman at BHS, there were many instances where I felt unsafe, ignored, and targeted due to my identity. Recently, becoming aware of other stories across the district has made me realize that I was far from alone. The best encounters and relationships with adults that I had at BHS were those that acknowledged my identities and invested in support with them in mind. I am here tonight in support of a policy that will hopefully allow future students to have better experiences than I and countless other marginalized students had at SMUHSD. I believe that this policy should be the first step of many towards a more equitable educational experience and will hold the district consistently accountable. I urge you to pass this racial equity policy tonight and to follow through with it with more specific policies to come. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Callie Palma. I'd like to speak against the racial equity plan. The board is being asked to vote in the interest of one special interest group to change the curriculum of every single subject, every single grade in every single school across the district. It outlines 4 pages of changes that would focus a massive amount of time, energy, and resources to overhaul the entire district curriculum so that one group's agenda can be put in the forefront of the classroom in every classroom. It requires the district to hire based on ethnicity over qualifications, and the Learning for Justice framework that's cited to adopt is extremely controversial choice that shouldn't be voted on without significant amount more conversation. The district's curriculum should not teach kids to see themselves first as an ethnicity that divides them from their peers, but instead focus on community, integrity, and quality of characters of each individual student. This policy that's proposed is full of politics that detract from the quality of education that would be provided for our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Natalie Delahunt, and then I will promote Katie Borgeson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to comment on this policy. Nice to see everybody. So I was fortunate enough to work on this policy, and so I take a little bit of pride in this policy. So there's a lot of noise right now around this policy, and I just want to make sure that the board focuses around the original intent of this policy, which was to make sure that historically marginalized and under-resourced students were seen, heard, and serviced. That was the original reason for this policy. And that it was done through a variety of ways: staffing, right? And educational resources, additional resources. And, you know, the noise that's happening, originally I was trying to figure out how to take this, and I'm trying to see this in a different light. And the reality is the fact that this policy is catching the attention of some folks, and those folks are really in positions that I feel like they're maybe losing some of their power and privilege. The fact that that is happening is letting me know that we have done the right thing with this policy, that we have done exactly what we actually set out to do. And so we're on the right track with this policy. So instead of taking this as I'm sort of internalizing this like, oh, my feelings are hurt, we are actually on the right track. And so I'm feeling really good about it, that those folks are feeling threatened, they're feeling angry, and they're claiming things like reverse racism, and this is only affecting one group, when the truth is this is going to affect all of our students in such a great way. Reverse racism doesn't exist. So if you're saying those things, you're not really understanding what we're trying to do. And so all of our students are going to achieve things to their fullest potential. And this policy is going to make all of our students feel seen, heard, validated, which is why this policy is so important. And it's so necessary for everyone. And so I just want to thank everybody who worked on this. So proud of this. Thank you to the board for taking this on. And just please continue on your bold leadership. I know it's hard. Please continue to be bold and courageous leaders that you are. And thank you so much for your time. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie Borgeson, and I am a senior at San Mateo High School and a member of the Equity Advisory Committee. As an active student participant and a member of multiple district committees, I am the eyes and ears of my community more than any adult could ever be. I see a need for change, and I see a community that is ready and more than willing to work towards that change. I, along with many of my peers, have waited long enough for a change like this to come to our schools. I've been a witness to countless acts of injustice, and these are because of institutions like this disregarding necessary education. This policy is about education, and I don't think I've ever heard of an educational institution straying from an opportunity to educate on an issue as pertinent as this one. This is a crucial change for our community and for the greater good of our students. I think it's time we stop treating these initiatives like radical change and more like necessary action. I also want to give my support to the students and staff at Peninsula High School. The district's disregard for this indispensable school is unacceptable and horrific. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Erica Duche, and then I'll bring in Emily Steinberger.
You can speak. Eric, Ms. Duche, you're up. Erica, you're ready to go. You have your
Next, we have Erica Duche, and then I'll bring in Emily Steinberger.
Go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, trustees and fellow stakeholders. I would like to speak in support of the racial. I'm on. Okay. Good evening, trustees and fellow stakeholders. I would like to speak in support of the racial equity policy.
You're ready to go.
It's not working?
No, you're doing fine. That's my fault.
Oh, sorry.
She should be able to start over.
Yeah, we can start over.
Speak in support of the racial.
Okay, is it working now? Okay. I would like to speak in support of
trustees and fellow stakeholders. I would like to speak in support of the racial equity policy.
Are you on the YouTube channel?
It's not working?
There's a lag.
That's my fault.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'm going to try this again.
She should be able to start over.
Yeah, we can start over.
Speak in support of the racial.
Working now.
You have
Okay.
it on.
I would like to speak in support of
trustees and fellow stakeholders. I would like to speak in support of the racial equity policy.
Are you on the YouTube?
It's not working?
There's a lag.
That's my fault.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'm going to try this again.
She should be able to start over.
Yeah, we can start over.
Speak in support of the racial.
Erica, I think it's because you have something on your screen that's doing it's recording and listening. We're hearing it.
I would like to speak in support.
Perhaps we come back to you, Ms. Duche, and then after the speaker.
I fixed the problem, I think.
Okay,
Can you
good.
hear me now?
Thank
I'm
you.
so
Yes,
sorry
good.
about that.
No problem. Good. We're
Yeah,
anxious
wow.
to hear you.
Okay. Good evening, trustees and fellow stakeholders. I would like to speak in support of the racial equity policy. My name is Erica Duche, and I am the Black Student Union Advisor at Cappuccino High School. We don't have any Black teachers at Cappuccino High School, so our students have to settle for me. One of the first conversations our BSU students had was that they wanted to have they wish they had a Black teacher. Intuitively, they knew that something is missing in their education by not having a teacher who looks like them. So last year we decided that since we didn't have any Black teachers, we'd invite guest speakers. Our first guest speaker was Dr. Sears, a professor of sociology and African American studies at the University of San Francisco. She validated their feelings about representation, saying that even when there is a small percentage of BIPOC students representation within education and places of power in general is needed, because if we don't see people who look like us in places of power, we can't imagine ourselves in those places. At the end of her presentation, she asked us all to do one thing: talk about race. She said, "We need to talk about race. If we can't talk about race, then we can't address issues around racism." Cappuccino BSU students don't have any teachers who look like them. And research suggests that this is affecting their learning experience. According to widely accepted research, Black students who have even one Black teacher during elementary school are more likely to graduate high school and consider college. Black students with Black teachers experience less exclusionary discipline and fewer office visits. And it's not only Black students who benefit from being taught by Black teachers. Research has shown that students of color, not just Black students, but students of color in general, believe teachers of the same race hold them to higher expectations and are more culturally sensitive than their white counterparts. We know that having a teacher who looks like you impacts learning outcomes, but we have students who have never had a teacher who shared their cultural experience. That's an inequity. Ibram X. Kendi says there's no such thing as neutral policy. Every policy in every institution in every community and every nation is either sustaining either racial inequity or equity between racial groups. I'm asking you to choose the policy that aims to sustain equity between racial groups.
You can start to wrap up your comments. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Steinberger, and I'm a BHS alumna. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Ramaytush Ohlone people whose land the San Mateo Union High School District built its schools on. Continuing on, I'm a graduate of the BHS class of 2019, and I'm here to share why I am in favor of the racial equity policy and why you should be too. Now at Syracuse University in New York, I am a member of an extremely more diverse community that BHS and the rest of SMUHSD should have, but did not prepare me for. I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Daily Orange, Syracuse's independent student newspaper, and a member of the organization's diversity committee on its board of directors. In these roles, I work to make the Daily Orange a welcoming and supportive place for student journalists of color who have historically not received the support that white student journalists have received. I am hopeful that, if passed, this policy will be an important step for SMUHSD as a primarily white institution to provide needed support to students of color. SMUHSD cannot say that it supports its students of color until it makes actionable change, beginning with this policy, to help students of color thrive in this district and beyond. I look forward to the day where I can be a proud alumna, impressed with the action that the district has taken to support its students of color. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jennifer Way, and I'll bring in Pamela Garfield Yeager.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Way, and I graduated from Aragon High School in 1998. I now teach at Aragon, and I sit on the Social Justice and Equity Committee, as well as on the Equity Advisory Committee. In all of these places, I've had the joy of working alongside students, teachers, families, partner school representatives, district, county employees to support equity in our district. Hearing from our Peninsula High School family tonight has been inspiring. Thank you, Pumas. You've filled my soul, and I stand with you, and I exhort the board and district administration to act swiftly and with efficacy. President Hanley, we are all on our knees, but you have the power to lift Peninsula up, even as their words, commitment, and love tonight have lifted us all. I'm actually here tonight to express my support of the Racial Equity Board policy. The heart of this work, the philosophy at the core, is the idea that power can be shared and that it ought to be shared. I understand that this can feel like a loss if we operate under the assumption that power ought to be centralized. it's going to feel like a loss because we might be invested in supremacy and getting the best for our students with only one way or one measure of success of what the best is. Tonight, I am suggesting that the enormous power of shared decision-making, of empowering our entire student body, of seeking a diversity of definitions for normal, for successful, and for excellent means that we must gather and imagine farther than we might individually imagine. So many of our students say that they only knew 3 successful jobs: doctor, lawyer, engineer. Obviously, these professions represent 3 excellent paths, but they're only 3 out of a multitude of excellent paths. As a product of this district, I had to unlearn that narrowness, to recognize the limits of my imagination and to learn beyond what I had been taught, both in school and in our community. The Nigerian author and activist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie calls this the single story, taking one example and making it the definitive example for all. That is what we simply recognize in this policy, that for too long, our district and community have unconsciously and willingly participated in perpetuating one dominant example of being intelligent, excellent, successful, kind, joyful, innovative. Adichie ends with, when we reject the single story, when we realize that there's never a single story about any place, we regain a kind of paradise. Thank you for listening. Thank you for educating me. And thank you for inspiring me.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Miss.
You're on mute.
Oh, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Pam.
Go ahead.
I'm opposed to this. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I spent years with teens in schools and in mental health settings. I was a clinical supervisor for school counseling programs in San Mateo and Santa Clara County. And I found this letter from a woman who lived in the Deep South in the 1950s, who's very glad you're providing this racial equity programs in your school, and I wanted to read it to you. These are not my words, but this lady, her name is Susie May. Hi, my name is Susie May. I'm from Alabama, and I lived through the golden days of the 1950s when segregation and Black folk were kept away from me. I read your curriculum, and I want to congratulate your board on keeping systemic racism alive. I was sure after the civil rights movement that things could never get back to the ways I'm used to. That good old judging people by their skin color. And that's what you're doing, I see that. All those evil people like Martin Luther King Jr. fought for people to respect one another for the content of their character. That's pish posh. Equality isn't right. It's great that you're reminding those white kids in all of their classes that they're more privileged than the other children. And let's keep those minority kids down by teaching them that they will always be a victim no matter the circumstances and no matter how hard they try. We don't need to start feeling empowered. We don't need them to start feeling empowered. We need to ensure that minority students learn that they have no responsibility in life. That's great that you wouldn't challenge these kinds of kids to believe in their own abilities. They might learn valuable lessons, grow up successful, or may even change people's minds on this beautiful idea you have of judging only by skin color and always talking about race. Merit definitely causes too much trouble because that gives children all races equal opportunity, and we definitely don't want that. I also want to say, what a neat word, equity. I love it. I wish we had that in the 1950s. It's a great way to trick those people who think it's the same as equality. It sounds like equal treatment, but it's not equality at all. Equity ensures unequal treatment and lowers the standards for all children. With equity, all of the children aren't challenged as much, so the BIPOC kids won't get ahead.
Wrap
How
up your
lovely.
remarks, please.
Standards for white children might go down, but it's a small price to pay to keep the smarter ones down. So let's keep them all down. Thank you for doing such great work. Now this is Pam speaking, and I don't agree with Susie May, and I'm concerned about our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Melissa Poblet, and I'm going to bring in Letitia King.
Thank you. I'm a teacher at Hillsdale High School and a product of the public school system. I'm here to speak in support of the Racial Equity Board policy. Public school is meant to serve everyone in a community. For years, decades, centuries, it's operated from the perspective that only certain voices matter, even if this belief was hidden under the misnomer of free and public. For years, people of color were invited or allowed in the system if and only if they assimilated. That forced assimilation has always been met with resistance. Today, we in the public education system use terms like inclusivity, representation, and equity, but these mean nothing if students don't feel like they belong. Belonging means that systems and cultures change as a result of their presence. Students should not feel like they have to assimilate to a system that only allows them to be free as long as they remain silent in public. If I want my students to be critical thinkers, which I do, then I want them to question the systems that continue to perpetuate the idea that we need to constantly compete for limited resources. That if I don't look out for me and mine, then what might happen? This is a real fear, a fear that propels people to act in ways that may seem selfish. I get it. My parents always had that fear lingering in the back of their minds. If I make room for others, what will happen to me and mine, to me and what I have? We need to examine where this fear comes from. I want us adults to examine the pernicious effect that way of thinking can have on young adults' minds. Examine what we are saying and how we are saying it. Look at the ways in which this way of thinking, me and mine, you versus me, either or, is hurting all of our students. Every day I see students who want justice and freedom in this world. They may not always use language of governmental or economic policy, but they do ask questions about who gets what and why. Do I want to answer them with only some people matter and only certain histories can be told? I can't, because that is not true and that is not just. Every day I see the beauty in my students' compassion and care for others. This argument
You could start to wrap up your remarks, please.
Thank you. This argument against the Racial Equity Board policy, this is the antithesis to that compassion and empathy that so many of our students inherently have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, can I go now?
Yes.
Hi, thank you. My name is Letitia Kim. I'm from the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism called FAIR. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit that advocates for compassionate anti-racism. FAIR supports efforts to ensure historically marginalized voices are heard and their stories are told, but we urge that this policy be amended. We have concerns about its focus. This policy indicates students will be taught their skin color is one of their primary defining characteristics, if not the primary defining characteristic. Race is certainly an aspect of one's identity, and many consider it important. And our differences should be recognized, but the ultimate focus should be on our common humanity and what unites us. These regulations don't appear to do that. We're also concerned whether this policy respects differences of opinion. For example, students will be taught about white privilege, and the glossary says white privilege can be hard to accept, but undeniably exists. Will students be allowed to disagree? If a student disagrees, will they be told they must adopt and affirm it anyway? And will students even be given the ability to disagree? Students cannot form their own conclusions unless the school gives them sources with different opinions, including opinions the board members and teachers may strongly disagree with themselves. The regulations say the curriculum will include diverse voices and perspectives, which is great, but it doesn't appear that the students will actually hear different voices on any of the terms in the glossary, for example. The district has already defined those terms for the students, and there's no indication the students will be given the chance to define or understand them for themselves. And I don't believe any school district, including San Mateo, wishes to be a place where students are taught what to think rather than how to think. We believe history and injustices must be taught truthfully, but it should also be taught from diverse perspectives with emphasis on our common humanity. And I think a no vote, it doesn't mean you oppose racial equity. It just means this policy needs some further attention. So we respectfully request that the board vote no on this current version and present an amended version. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Brittany Redgate, and then I'll bring in Jean Mckenna.
Good evening, trustees and fellow stakeholders. As an educator in the district, I would like to voice my support of the Racial Equity Board policy. I was a model student in high school, achieving straight A's in an AP curriculum that by California state standards would be called highly rigorous. I graduated with a 4.6 GPA, passing 7 AP tests with high scores. I received a perfect score of 800 on the verbal portion of the SAT. But this is not an educational success story, because when I walked into my first class at UCLA, I was embarrassingly unprepared, unequipped. The students around me passionately engaged in conversations about power dynamics and cultural bias, about the harmful tropes and mischaracterizations in the books we were reading. Somehow my classmates had learned not only how to read in the lines of the text, but also between them, and I couldn't keep up. This is because I grew up in a bubble where the authors of the text I was given looked like me, thought like me, and reflected the world back to me from a collective, singular perspective. I was never asked to consider these ideas as biased, to think about the fact that the worlds these authors created were fashioned in their image and according to their experience in it. I was never asked to critique a text for the perspectives it championed, or to consider which ones were denigrated, marginalized, or left out completely. Now, as an English teacher, I support this policy pedagogically because I understand the incredible value we provide to all of our students when we expand our perspectives beyond our bubble, not just in the text that we choose, but in the way that we choose to talk about them. When we prepare all of our students to engage critically, not only in important discussions in the classroom, but in the discourse that is happening everywhere in our country. When we support them in cultivating informed opinions about these dynamics and to imagine worlds beyond them. This policy will encourage me to grow as a teacher, to ask important questions about which students are being left behind by the texts and tools that I choose, to become better at what I do. It's all added value to me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jean McKenna.
Hi, thank you for your time. The policy before the board makes very clear our district wants to confront race head on. I would agree we are better off if everyone knows our history, warts and all, and if we eliminate racial biases of personal or structural form. I believe the intentions of this policy are good, but as a policy statement, it is very overarching. It is also worryingly vague, as it does not relate these new goals to any existing goals. It is easy to read this policy and assume correcting historical racial injustice is now the most important goal of our school. But our schools necessarily have more than one goal. It's natural for a school, a family, a business to have multiple goals and priorities at the same time. As we all know, different priorities don't have to be in conflict with each other. The world is full of win-wins. But we also know there are cases where we can achieve one goal only at the expense of another. The problem with the policy before the board is it does not anticipate or give guidance on any way to resolve those conflicts when they do arise. And they will. For example, one priority we also have is high standards of education. There's nothing about this policy proposal that says high standards and a focus on racial issues must necessarily be in conflict, and I hope they never are. But once we set goals and hold ourselves accountable to greater equity, we will feel pressure to meet those goals. We can meet those with hard work and investment, but some metrics of equity can also be achieved by pushing the easy button instead. The easy button is lowering standards. Lower standards is not an unwarranted fear. We have seen San Francisco Unified lower its math standards, and now fewer kids take advanced math classes, including Algebra 2. We've seen our local middle school, Burrell, where my fourth grader will go, has eliminated its full-year algebra course and instead will only offer algebra in one semester. In both these cases, these changes were made to achieve the very goals being advocated here, more equitable outcomes. Again, I don't think the intent of this policy is to lower standards, and I don't think achieving goals set out in this policy requires lowering standards, but it's a very realistic concern. So I urge the board to hold off on approving this proposal until the language is clarified. As important as these new goals are, we cannot achieve them by taking shortcuts on existing goals. We must achieve these new goals and maintain high standards of education. As loudly as this policy states we must address issues of race, it must speak equally loudly that equitable outcomes achieved by lowering standards will not be accepted. If this is the intent of the board, then it's an easy call to require adding this clarification to the policy. Our students of all races deserve it, and without higher standards, they will not thrive.
Thank you.
Our final speaker on this item is Serena.
Hi, my name is Serena Argy. I am an alumni of the district and I'm also currently a teacher. I'm calling in to comment on my support of the policy. So I'm a white cisgendered woman, blue collar family. And what this policy does is that it actually helps myself to look deeper into my curriculum. It helps my fellow colleagues, and it also helps white students. So it's not just BIPOC students that it helps, but it helps us navigate a world to think deeper and to actually look at a curriculum and to question things that we have done in the past. I have mostly experience with a Western European art history background and throughout my education. And this sort of policy helps me think, reflect, and expand upon my teaching and be open to actually question and to shift and to actually include a little bit more student voice. And it's not divisive. It actually will help build more authentic relationships between our schools, which are actually quite diverse. And so having this sort of language actually helps build student connection and have cross-racial relationships where authentic relationships can't really exist without having this sort of basic knowledge. So thank you for supporting this policy.
Thank you.
And Mr. Griffin, I do apologize. I did overlook that we also have Rachel Lauderdale on this item. So let me promote her now.
Hello again. I'll try to keep this brief as my colleagues and our phenomenal student leaders have expressed similar support for the racial equity policy. Like many educators my age and older, I'm a product of a whitewashed high school curriculum that only portrayed stories of people that looked like me. It wasn't until I took ethnic studies classes at San Francisco State that I had the privilege of learning about the experiences of other races and ethnicities. This should not be a privilege, but a right for SMUHSD students. The Racial Equity Board policy is one more step in our long journey towards equity. It will require students to think deeply and critically. We shouldn't allow the fears of a few of our community members to prevent us from passing policies that benefit all of our students. This is not about critical race theory. It's not about lowering standards. It is about ensuring equitable outcomes for all of our students, including Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and students from all gender and sexuality identities. Listen to those that matter most, those who have to learn, survive, and thrive in our district, our students. Representation matters. Anti-racism matters, equity matters, our students' livelihoods depend on it. I trust you will all do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that the last public comment?
It is, thank you.
Okay. So Dr. Kemke, did you have something you wanted to perhaps add before the board discusses this?
I think many of the speakers are part of the Equity Advisory Committee and said much of what I was going to say. I just want to remind us that this was a collaborative effort and it was reviewed by students, teachers, parents in our community, and vetted through them. So, and it does commit us to creating a more equitable system. It does not speak to us changing any of our content standards, our instructional frameworks. Our teachers, as we know, are utmost professionals, and all of that I'm not at all worried about. So some of the comments there, I don't think have anything to do with this policy. The policy is around us aligning our equity mission and vision to the work that we want to do as a district. But many of the commenters, I think, already kind of articulated some of the clarification that I wanted to make there. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, board comments.
I want to make a motion to approve the policies.
Okay. Is there a second to the?
I will second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion from Trustee Land, a second from Trustee Griffin. Were there any other, did any other board members want to make comments before take the vote?
Yeah, there's three hands up, Mr.
I'm sorry, I can't see the hands. Yeah. My screen is cutting off the top of the frames.
Lehia was first, Bob was second, Linda was third, just so you know.
Okay. I can see Linda's hand, but the other ones I can't see. Okay, Lehia, please go ahead.
I'll be brief. This really reminds me of what I had talked about earlier about educating myself and really examining what my biases were when it came to people with disabilities. And excuse me, these types of policies and this types type of education. It does that. It helps us to examine what things we've been taught that we need to remove from our biases and from just the oppressive ideas that we've been taught. I grew up in Redwood City and I went to Sequoia High School. And when I went to Sequoia, it wasn't until I had teachers that looked like me that I really felt heard, and where I felt like I mattered, like I was represented. I did have AP English. There were no books that we read that reflected my community. I was the only student of color in that class, and it really spoke to my colleague or my fellow student friends that they would ask me, like, why are you even in those classes? They don't even care about us. They don't even include anything about us. But like for me, it was important because I did want to bring that representation. So that is why it's so important, is like what somebody else said, is the representation. And that is why even on our board, we need to have a diverse board. So like, I don't remember who was the one who said it, but students need to see themselves in us. They need to see themselves in the leaders in our communities and the leaders in our world and in the stories that we can bring to them. It's not always such a negative thing. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Griffin?
Yeah, thank you, President Hanley. You know, this policy is a collaborative effort of district stakeholders, and there's been a lot of effort put into it. The policy is probably not perfect, like so many things we do. We work hard at it. We try to get close. I think it's a significant step in the right direction, and I don't want to, stop it, start monkeying with it, send it back, and never get total agreement. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. Nobody's ever going to agree upon every piece of it. It's kind of interesting. And I think a lot of the comments from people who opposed it were heartfelt and sincere. I happened to see some comments and social media postings that were totally lacking in context and showed a lack of understanding. And certainly I saw where people put the context as they were going to get rid of white teachers, and the emphasis being white teachers. And I think the context there is people need to understand what the makeup of the district is, who the students are, what the demographics are, and Leah has talked about how that can impact the students. So I think what we're trying to do is recruit people that look like our community, our district. And we're not trying to put people out of jobs. We're not going after people, but in listening to the message. And I wanted to, and I don't do social media and I don't engage people I don't know. I really wanted to try to explain what the mission and the intent was. I left it alone. And I just, I think, it's part of a very big, what we're doing is part of a much broader conversation and a bigger project. And, we've tried to get people out here. We have, Lord knows, we have publicized every time we've talked about it. And, and it didn't draw interest till right now. And I think when some of the headlines I saw. So I'm going to, I'm going to vote for it. Thank you.
Trustee Lisa Ryer.
I'm next. Okay. This is a difficult one for me. It really is. And it's not that I don't believe that that we should have a policy or that we should have regs or any of that. I believe that we should, and I believe that we need something to move forward to do the right thing. And I look at, no one should feel different. No one should feel that there's no one who looks like them. That's not good for anyone. It's particularly not good for students. And listening to all the different people, the focus on skin color is a bit troubling because there are people who would fit into BIPOC but don't look it. So what happens to them? They relate and yet they don't. They're biracial. How do they see themselves? How are they treated? Are they do they fit into this white privilege thing because they look white, but yet they come from a history of people who have come together because of love, which should not have anything to do with skin color. So it's difficult for me to look at it. I feel like I would like BIPOC to be all. I want everyone to fit into, everyone to be listened to. And I think about the Jewish people who suffered through the Holocaust. Where do they fit into this? They're European, so they must be considered white. So that means that they don't. And yet the horrors that they have gone through, that their great-grandparents, great-grandparents went to, much, it certainly is not identical to the horrors of slavery, but it has its own horrors that they have suffered, and they have faced discrimination in our schools in this country too. So I guess I would like to see something that really just erases skin color and says all of our kidneys are the same, we're all the same. Let's be done with this. And I know that that's a very simplistic way of looking at things, and that will not happen. There are 44 countries that make up Europe, and yet you were looking at white privilege, and I mean it is difficult for me. I come from an area where no one was privileged. There may have been 2 people that were privileged. The entire area is Title I. Nobody had any money, and so they were all poor. And when I look and I read white privilege, and I think, boy, the people had no privileges there. And I look at some of the language, and I think, it's language I want to go away. Since white people in America hold most of the political, institutional, economic power, it should be historically white people have held, because I want that in the past, and I want the present to really encompass everyone who comes here, everyone who lives here and works here and wants to participate should be able to participate and should know that they can. So I mean, I think some of the language hopefully is going to get dated very quickly, which doesn't make it the best policy. It's better to write it in a way that is forward thinking. And I'm a little bit concerned of that. I am concerned that it doesn't feel inclusive enough for me, and I would like it to be more inclusive. But what I am thinking as time goes on, it will become more inclusive. I don't want any student to feel that there's no one who looks like them, that they cannot relate. They should be able to. A few board meetings ago, we've been talking about these issues for a long time. A young Muslim woman student talked about how she was taunted for being Muslim. That should never happen. But I'm not sure where she fits into this. But I want her to fit into this because I want her to have the same rights. And I guess I'll use the word privileges. Everyone should have the same privileges. And I want that young lady to have it too. So my concern by creating terms that are not inclusive is that they become exclusive. And so that if a student feels they don't fit into the term, then that lumps them into another category. And how does that feel to them? How do they become part of everything, which I would like to see all of us become part of. So I think this is a very good first step. But I hope that as we go forward, we continue to look at this and look at how we can make it inclusive, and that unity is a true word, that everyone is included, because I think that will, I don't want to create separate groups, and that does happen in this policy. So I'm hoping down the line that we will look at how we can empower and include everyone in every activity and every opportunity that we have in the district. So thank you. I know I went on a long time.
Trustee Land, did you still have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to just say a couple things. So just in reaction to what you're saying, Linda, all I can say is I do support this policy 100%. I think what we have to realize here is for so long, these voices haven't been heard. And what we're trying to say is to open those voices and have them being heard. And in its degrees, there's not just one, and of many colors and of many cultures. And that includes the religious groups that you were talking about. And I think that is beyond, and I think it's the policy goes beyond that to be able to talk about power structures and system structures that have to be questioned and And I think this is a good policy to start that. And I think it's very important. What I will say is this. I am so impressed with the students that spoke tonight and the teachers. On a personal note, all I'm going to say is I really wish I was in some of these teachers' classes when I was a child and in high school, because it was just amazing to hear your voice and the clarity to which you spoke. I will not repeat it because it was much better than whatever I can say. So thank you very much for your contributions tonight and what you said. Thank you.
So I'm going to support this policy also. I think it is a good step forward. I think it's actually a vehicle that is a way of ensuring that we're focused on raising standards and raising academic expectations and increasing student engagement in academic programs and school in general, so that students feel engaged and seen and heard. And I would certainly not support something that I felt was in any way going to lead to lower standards and lower academic outcomes. Anyone who's heard me over the years would recognize that. But I am going to support this. So we already have a motion from Trustee Land and a second from Trustee Griffin, I believe. So I'm going to call for the vote. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Andre Zuniga?
Absolutely.
Trustee Land?
Absolutely.
Trustee Lee Dwyer?
I vote yes as a very solid beginning.
And I vote yes. So the policy is adopted 5-0. So that gets us out of the consent agenda. At 8:49. So regular reports. Report of the superintendent.
Why don't you hold just for a second on doing that, and then I'll get to it. First, I want to thank Trustee Hanley for joining me on Wednesday to go around San Mateo High School. We had a great tour of the campus. We spent about 45 minutes visiting band, dance, biotech, science classes, cooking classes, the whole shooting match. It felt like it was a great time. And anybody else on the board has time to do that, I'd love to have another excuse to visit one of our campuses. Well, we've got a lot of stuff going on here. I do want to respond to the conversation about Peninsula High School. There is the social worker mentioned on the agenda. The comments that were made by the public, many of those sentiments were shared by staff, parent, and others at the discussion that we had last week. They're heartfelt. We all share an interest in doing right by Peninsula. There's lots of work to be done. We're past the discussion level, and now it's time to do action. We've already begun work on solving the various technology issues. We're working on a contract that we'll bring to you at the next board meeting around beautification, greening up, or not greening up, coloring up. I can't remember what the term was. Warming up. That's right. Warming up the facility and other contracts there. You'll see these on the agenda. We also are really interested in making sure that the ratio of students to staff is much lower at Peninsula. That's true right now. The conversation with Peninsula, it is a different school. It needs different resources. We all agree on that. And what those resources are conversations that we're all engaged in. If the board remembers last year, we added staff to tilt the scales so that we were really taking care of some of our students who are furthest from opportunity. And we want to continue that work, and we'll be working on personnel issues as we lead into the next year. and for the rest of this year. One of the big topics that has been brought up is the issues around safety on our campus. And we've been working extremely hard on this. I want to present just a few things and to help me on this presentation, and the person who can speak a lot more articulately than I can is Sarah Devaney, and she's going to speak on behalf of all the health folks and who've worked so hard on these issues as we've tried to navigate what has been an unprecedented surge in COVID cases. So with that, I think you take the first 3 or 4 slides, Ms. Devaney.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good evening. So let's talk a little bit about what's happened since we've returned from winter break. I think during winter break, we started seeing an increase in cases. We started hearing about the changes from CDC, from CDPH, and then we know that guidance comes here to San Mateo County, and we follow when it is adopted here. We had some major changes in the guidance on January 6th and January 12th, and we're expecting more changes this week. Those affect the isolation, the reduction of isolation to 5 days from 10 days for a positive case. It affects quarantine recommendations for both students vaccinated and unvaccinated. Some other things, right? We're watching our cases closely in San Mateo County. We think we're starting to see that decline. We are going to continue to watch that and follow up this guidance based on what we're seeing in the county. Some other additional guidance is related to sports gatherings. We're continuing to hear about trying to reduce those, and the guidance is supporting that as well. So we're looking at our sports, our gatherings, our field trips, and adjusting as we can to make sure we're keeping safety first. Some other things that have been happening throughout the pandemic, but we're still focused on, and we know we need to do more, but we did have some vaccine clinics this week, specifically at Cappuccino High School. I think we had upwards of 40 students who are continuing to get first doses, second doses, and boosters this week. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about our increased testing. We know we have work to do there, and we're actively recruiting and supporting the increase of testing. And then another piece of the guidance that was released was the new group model for contact tracing. And we know we have work to do there, as most of the schools in the county are working on this. Next slide. Let's talk about our positive COVID cases. So these numbers are reflective of our students and staff beginning the week of January 3rd through present today. These cases reflect not just kids that are on our campus, but through our testing resources. And so our tests right now we're using through CDPH, those are on campus in person. We also have the at-home test that we were able to give out to students prior to winter break. And so we requested that they test the Sunday before we returned and the Tuesday before we returned to campus. So you'll see the week of the 3rd, our cases were up, significantly up from what we've seen previously this year and during the pandemic. The week of the 10th, that you start to see in some area, in some of the school sites, they've declined. And then this week, you've seen in almost all the sites, you've seen a significant decline in those cases. Reflective here are also the positive cases of those who are testing out of isolation. So just want to make note that these are not all active cases on campus, but are using our testing resources. We'll go to the next slide. So this is the amount of testing that we've done by week. You can see large amounts of testing. The first week, close to 9,000 tests on campus and through our at-home testing. We've continued steady last week in testing. As we've gotten further along since winter break, we are putting up structures, we're creating schedules and appointments. We heard a little bit earlier about how there are long lines, and we're doing some work to support that. So some sites are doing by grade level, some are doing by appointments, and we know that we're working both to increase opportunities and also safely get kids tested and get them to class with minimal time missed from the class.
Next slide.
This is our student attendance for the first 3 weeks. And so the assumption here is that these absences are due to COVID or possible COVID or exposure in the home. So you see our numbers again, we're up the first 2 weeks back from winter recess, and now again we're on the decline. So we're seeing those kids who have either tested positive or had exposures or testing, and we're getting them back to class. You'll see there on the right side, that's that yellow bar. So we're seeing that go down significantly. And I think I'm handing it back over to Dr. Scully.
Next slide. Okay, so I want to hold two truths here. One is that we are doing more than any other district, certainly in the county. And when you look at what the complaints are in other places, we're doing a lot of work, but we have a lot more to do. So first, steps that we need. These are steps taken, and then some steps that we will begin next week. One is contact tracing. When the numbers were low, we were doing, contact tracing was easy. When you have hundreds and hundreds of cases, it makes it very difficult for us to do the kind of robust contact tracing that we were doing in the fall. But we anticipate resuming that next week. We will do as much as we possibly can to make sure that our staff know about cases that are in their classrooms, and families know if there are cases that occur in the classrooms where their students are. Testing. We made a decision over the break to go from testing. The expectation the board built was that all unvaccinated students or who were participating in extracurricular activities would have to test weekly. We expanded that to include all athletes and extracurricular participants weekly, regardless of their vaccine status. We felt like that was an important thing. We've seen a lot of cases involving our athletes. The first week of indoor activities were postponed. So now athletes are having a full season, but it's truncated in terms of the number of weeks that the teams will be competing with each other. This has been a big adjustment. It's a right move, and we feel like it's improved the safety and the opportunities for kids to participate. Over the break before school started, we pleaded and moved to really encourage everybody to have a high quality KN95 mask or N95 mask. Anecdotally, in the classrooms where I've been subbing, many kids reported that they upgraded their masks in part because of what we said, but also just recognizing the importance of folks looking out for each other. In my conversations with teachers, and I think Mr. Haley will vouch, when we spend time in classrooms, we see kids wearing their masks. Yes, there are some things that kids need to be reminded about, but in general, our students continue to be really aware of that. We have over 100,000 masks available. Some of them folks like wearing more than others, but we have masks that can replace any situation, and teachers have those masks in the classroom. January and early February are typically times where we have winter dances. These have been postponed or canceled. Now our schools are entering into discussions about senior proms. This is a real tough issue for us because many of the venues that they're exploring require vaccination and are also have an expectation that money put down for proms will be non-refundable. So our activities directors are working hard on this issue, and it's a tough one for them to make decisions because they involve various trade-offs. We had a January 31st Professional Learning Day that was scheduled to be in person. Like many of our meetings, we have postponed those to now they're virtual, and we're allowing, we're we think the right move and the humane move is also, if we're going to make a meeting that lasts all day, it can be also done remotely. So staff that want to come in and attend the meeting, they can, but that particular day, all the staff who are participating can also do those from the comfort of their own home. Every student was offered 2 rapid tests to administer before January return to school. This led to high numbers, but it also created a safer environment because those students were not reporting to school and then were only testing when they wanted to come back. With those, we wanted to give those to staff as well, but the requirements were that those were given to students, and we were one of the only districts in the area who had those available for students. Other school districts were testing at school the days before. And we were really pleased, the board and the state expect every staff member who's not vaccinated to test, but we had almost all of our staff, and we appreciate the support of our labor groups, that every staff member tested before students returned to school. So on that, on the Tuesday, January 4th, staff were tested. Many staff members turned out positive, but they were not exposing students to that experience, or they tested at home and didn't even come to school those days. So those were important steps that have been going on or will go on. Next slide, please. We have steps to do, and we have really been in a triage. Is it safe to say a war footing? But it's been like a triage hospital, I'll say. So many things that we would want to do, even if we had more staff, we would have really struggled for. But these are the next steps that we feel like we need to take in the next couple of months. First, we need to gather data on students and staff booster status and request updated vaccine status for both groups. This happened earlier. This was before boosters, and now we need to go back and get that information. We also think that there are many students who may need a booster, and we want to provide those for them. And then we also know that there are students who've been vaccinated but haven't communicated their new vaccine status to us. Staff recommends the district build an expectation that all unvaccinated students test weekly. We think we can do that and get a high level of participation with the right kind of messaging and right kind of sort of peer pressure, some of the cycle, just really encourage that test weekly. And as time goes on, expand this to all students and staff, regardless of their status. And if case rates fall, this could be removed. But we think this is now time for us to send messages that build an expectation that, hey, if you're not vaccinated as a student, you need to do things to help those staff who are vulnerable or other students who are vulnerable. And we think we can get a higher level of compliance through messaging there. We want to communicate with all families the expectation that all students have to be vaccinated for the 22-23 year given state mandate. We want students to come back fully vaccinated. We want to, we don't know what the state's provisions are going to be around exemptions for personal or religious or medical reasons, but we would encourage the board to look to build expectations that are similar around vaccination status for other vaccines that students are within the context of what the state will allow. We also want to offer booster and first-time vaccination opportunities on campus during the testing periods if we can provide a provider of vaccines, and we want to publicize this widely. A couple of issues were brought up around work around the expansion of sick leave for employees who have COVID. We are anxious to work on that issue with our bargaining units. Dr. Black has been in communication with our labor groups on this topic, and we're eager to do that. But we and this, many of us veteran staff members have a strong sick leave balance, but they're also newer staff member or folks that have had significant illnesses during their career or maternity and paternity leave who may be in a position where they have less. And I think we had a discussion about this in closed session, but we will not penalize any staff member during this negotiation time in terms of their salary if they have to use, if they exceed their sick leave balance due to COVID cases. So that's conversations that we'll be having in the next few weeks. Next slide. I really want to stop and thank our community. Tonight, you heard about areas that people have concerns about what we're doing here. I think it's not, I think that's an effort to recognize that we have work to do, but I think we also owe a deep sense of gratitude for those people who've been working so hard during this time. No, we're not where we want to be, but it's not through fault of effort or the commitment of many, many people here. Our health aides and athletic trainers have administered more tests than I think anybody thought we could administer. And they've kept records. They've done huge amounts of work. So we owe them a deep debt. We're deeply indebted to them. Our attendance techs have handled a large number of absences. When absences are this high, their work is just swamped. And so we really appreciate them. Teachers and administrators have subbed in classrooms. They've been helping with testing. They've supervised athletics, and they've asked really good questions during the the daily COVID huddle, or in emails to us, or in communications that have helped us all do a better job here. We appreciate our Teachers Association for meeting during the break and problem solving and building these the school protocols, and then also building a culture where the people standing in front of our students are modeling the kind of behavior that we want to see among our students. I want to thank the people who tested positive, who stayed home when they were sick. This is really important as we try to do this. And then everyone for their patience, hard work, and leaning into this challenge. It's been, I think it's been some of the hardest 2 or 3 weeks we've had, but I think we've really continued to provide a high quality experience for our students in as safe an environment as we could. So that's the end of my comments here today.
Okay, thank you. I understand we do not have a student board member this evening. Is that still correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let me move to the report of the District Teachers Association representative.
Caroline Wise Carver is going to make that report tonight, and she is floating in as a panelist right now.
Okay, great.
Good evening, board members and superintendent's cabinet. Before beginning, I would first like to make it clear that while you may only be seeing my face tonight, the voice and words to follow are that of the entire Peninsula High School community. We would like to thank our union CTA and CSEA for the support we have received, in particular for forfeiting time tonight to allow us to educate the community on our school's movement, one that we all agree holds a very important message, and one that until we forced the hand publicly was previously silenced. 1 year ago, on January 21st of 2021, members of the PHS community stood in front of you with the goal of showcasing the many ways in which we support our students and the positive impacts that have come from that. We spoke about and provided data from the Student Panorama Survey, proving higher rates of engagement, positive teacher-to-student relationships, and an increased sense of belonging to their community. We felt it necessary to advocate for ourselves in this manner because we thought it would lead to more awareness. to Peninsula being seen for what we are and all that we do, with the hopes of showing that we are worthy of increased district support. We ended our presentation with an invitation to the board members, as well as others, to come to our school, to speak with and learn from our community, and to witness Peninsula for themselves. Unfortunately, that is not what happened. And despite the encouragement and celebration we received from our presentation, which left us with hope, no action followed. Instead, on November of 2021, as one voice, the PHS community came together to write you a letter addressing the many inequities PHS has faced and continues to face without district leadership action. In order to make the broader community aware, we proposed we receive time on tonight's board agenda. That proposal was ignored. In December of 2021, out of frustration and solidarity, our CTA union leaders advocated again that we receive time on tonight's board agenda. That ask was ignored. In January of 2022, after the letter had been received with ample time to read and reflect, we were still left without any response from the board. A meeting was called to discuss the letter, which both superintendent's cabinet and some board members attended. And while we appreciate that, we were left with no action plan to move forward. Because of the lack of resolution following that meeting, we reached out again to request that we be on tonight's board agenda. That request was denied. We are here tonight to raise awareness within the district's greater community and to provide updates on the status of Peninsula as we continue to disrupt the inequities we face, just as we are being taught to do. Last year, we asked for you to see us. This year, we demand to be heard. In the 21-22 school year, our district took on the task of beginning an equity initiative based in anti-racist practices and inclusivity for all. The mission statement for this initiative, which was adopted by the board in February of 2020, reads as follows: to continually identify, disrupt, and eliminate institutional biases and barriers to ensure that all students have the skills and knowledge to thrive. If this is truly the goal of our district, and you have heard the state in which our school is functioning, can you say with confidence we are achieving that mission? And while our numbers may be small compared to the comprehensives, does that mean we deserve less of that mission work? Our students are your students. Throughout the district, we are being asked to focus on the margins. We are the margins, and that work should begin with us. In order to clearly understand the scope of inequities this current dismissive culture has caused, it is important to us that you understand that these issues did not begin with this new building. In San Bruno, despite the endless hard work and ingenuity of our staff, the state of our building was impossible to ignore, and yet it was. A building that had rarely been updated since the 80s, classrooms and offices with rodent and bug infestations, black tar dripping from our ceilings through our non-functional downlights, the only school without updated staff laptops, minimal and sometimes no ability to control the interior temperatures of our spaces, which once led a classroom temperature upwards of 90 degrees, but somehow we still welcomed students every day. That very property is now being sold for $85 million. Hearing that number is disheartening to our community, knowing that the property we were moved into was purchased for just $8 million. We were continually assured that these issues would be resolved with a new school site. However, as you have seen in our letter, we continue to have technological and physical building issues that have yet to be remedied after months of clear requests. Above the line items of fixing technology and construction, we fear that our new school has damaged the very culture and community we have worked so hard to build. Our students and staff have no place to congregate or come together as a school because we have no common space large enough to hold everyone for rallies or community activities, just as we once did. We advocated strongly for this need and expressed this concern before any building was ever built, and yet it was not taken into consideration. Looking at the portfolio on the builder's website and the beautiful work they have done on different comprehensive sites and the district office, it leaves us questioning why ours appears so different. The students see our facilities as a direct representation of what they deserve. And if we are to look at the San Bruno site or the new location, that reflection is not one of worth or care. In addition to building concerns, Peninsula has made numerous requests in regards to our staffing and available resources. We are continually met with the response that we are appropriately resourced and staffed based on our small numbers. While our student body may be small, in order to service them properly and equitably, it is crucial that we not service based on number, but based on need. We are encouraged to use street data and many other avenues of district work. However, if you really look at the street data for PHS, it would undoubtedly show that we service students with the highest amount of need. Peninsula High School currently has 1.4 wellness counselors dedicated to our students. In just the first few weeks of school, from August to September 2nd, our one wellness counselor had a total of 113 individual student contacts in comparison to a district comprehensive site who saw 72 student contacts amongst 4 separate wellness counselors. It goes without saying that students today have more mental health challenges than in previous years, but we implore you to keep in mind the population we serve at Peninsula. Those in the margins need multiple layers of intervention at a higher frequency. To be equitable, this is the lens you must view Peninsula through. While we are happy to see the district is finally working toward hiring a social worker for Peninsula, we would like to remind you that we previously requested for this role based on need and data just for this service to only be fulfilled for bridge and comprehensive site students. We are also curious, where would they work? Despite similar staff numbers from before the move, our current site already does not support the amount of staff we have. Our EL coordinator is currently working out of the staff break room, a small room where every seat counts as we already cannot fit comfortably. Just as the students see their worth reflected in the building, our staff cannot help but wonder if these buildings and the shortcomings and oversights are due to our perceived worth, the worth our district has for the ones who serve those at the margins. The very work we are being asked to do this year is to challenge and disrupt the inequities within our systems. Doing so will require that you unlearn the conditioning that has historically ignored our most disadvantaged students and alternative sites. Continuing to ignore the culture that neglects Peninsula is a direct contradiction to that work. Now is the time to provide our community with an action plan that addresses our needs and the cultural shift that it demands. To the community, we want to thank those of you who have already disrupted these behaviors. We want to thank the students, parents, and community members who have already spoken out on our behalf. Please continue to do so, as there is still a lot of work to be done to ensure that this work is not done in vain. Students, parents, teachers, counselors, and even administration, we ask that moving forward, you be mindful of the way you speak about Peninsula. Question the intent behind your words, consider the lives you are impacting with those words, and reflect on the cultural change that you can affect by committing to do better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is the report of the CSEA Chapter 519 representative.
Yes, hello, good evening, everyone. President Hanley, Dr. Skelly, members of the board. Happy New Year and welcome back. My name is Jim Brock and I am the acting CSEA president. A little about myself. I started in the district in 2009 as one of the original utility workers, and currently I am a campus safety specialist at Burlingame High School. I'm also an alumni of the San Mateo Union High School District, having graduated from BHS in 2000. I'm excited for my new position with the CSEA and look forward to working with all of you to continue to make our district the best it possibly can be for our staff and students. Peninsula High School, we hear you, and we stand in solidarity with you as you advocate for equitable funding and resources for all staff and students. It has been very busy across all campuses, not just because of the start of the new semester, but because of the rising COVID cases with testing and notifications. Nearly all of our departments have felt the impact. We would like to thank the health aides, campus safety specialists, and athletic trainers for their continued commitment and efforts. We would also like to thank the district and board for the updated work from home agreement that is up for approval tonight. Thank you for your continued support of this added benefit. And managers and administrators, thank you for your flexibility and your speedy approval when these requests are sent to you. Lastly, congratulations, Dr. Skelly, on the announcement of your retirement. Although it will only be a few months, I'm excited to work with you on behalf of our chapter, and I'm wishing you all the best. And I just want to say thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is the report of the San Mateo Adult School Teachers Association representative, Ms. Ackerman.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you. We have classes that we're offering in the spring. It'll be our CERTS skills training class and our ESL City Government Academy that starts for the upcoming professional communications classes on February 2nd to April 6th. We also offer micro office and Google classes. So if you wish to update, come and see us. We'd love to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Section L, presentation on the process to create trustee areas in a public hearing regarding the content of trustee area maps.
Right, so this is, we have a couple of experts to join us here. Mr. Doug Johnson is here from the National Demographics Corporation, and then Mr. Harold Fryman, who is with Lozano Smith. I'm going to turn this item over to them, and they're going to walk through this for us here tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm Doug Johnson from National Demographics. Harold, I think I'm presenting and Harold's just going to answer questions unless Harold, you wanted to say something first.
No, Doug, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll jump in. We can go to the next slide. This is kind of phase 2 of the process. The process started with 2 initial informational and information gathering hearings back in August and September. And now we're back tonight to start looking at draft maps and to get the discussion going about the draft maps. So we do have some maps to show you. These are not the only options. These are to get the discussion going and to welcome your feedback. The board will be selecting its preferred map in, I guess it's about 3 weeks on February 10th. And as we talked about in the earlier hearings, this is an unusual process in that the board's decision is not the final decision. Once the board selects its preferred map, then we go to the county committee for a hearing and final vote by that body. Go to the next slide. In terms of the rules for how the trustee areas are drawn, we have first federal laws. So these are our requirements. We have to have equal population in each trustee area. There's a couple of percent plus or minus that you can be off in order to achieve other goals, but it is a pretty strict requirement. We also need to be sure that the trustee areas comply with the requirements of the Federal Voting Rights Act. And we have to be sure there's no racial gerrymandering, which boils down to race can be one factor in the decision of how maps are drawn, which map is chosen, but it cannot be what the courts call the predominant factor. So, and obviously all the maps we're presenting to you today will comply with all those federal requirements. Where the decisions and discretion come down is in balancing what are called traditional redistricting principles. So among maps that comply with all the federal requirements, then you can choose the map that has the best balance of these different factors. So the most often spoken about is, of course, communities of interest. Then you can also try to be compact, contiguous, and to follow visible, easily understood boundaries like major roads or rivers. Those 3 are also that the election areas will be easy for the voters to understand. You can respect the voters' choices by trying to avoid having 2 current board members in the same trustee area. And again, that's a goal or a traditional principle, not a requirement. You can offset or anticipate future growth to a little bit within that couple of percentage play that's allowed in the equal population range. And then the last 2 don't come up in districting, which we're going through this time, but traditional principles that will come up next time around is you can look to minimize the number of voters that are shifted from one election year to another. And one of the main reasons this first time through is so important, in future redistricting is often one goal is to minimize the disruption to the existing districts so that people who over the next few years work together on elections can continue to work together on elections in future years. So next slide, please. These are reference that information that was requested in the earlier hearings and possible communities definitions that were talked about in the information gathering hearings were things like attendance zones. You can see the map on the left of the district's attendance zones. And then you can see in the left-hand column the population size for each one. And on the right, you have, of course, the cities and census places, which are unincorporated but census recognized communities with the population numbers for each one of those. So as we're looking at these different ways and the different maps of putting these trustee years together, these are some of the building blocks that we're using as we draw these lines. Next slide, please. So each of the maps that I'm about to show you have a different focus based on different approaches to communities. So draft 101 is mainly drawn based on high school attendance zones. So you can see the blue lines on the map to the right are your high school attendance zones. And then the color shadings are the proposed trustee areas. So the salmon at the top is area 1, blue is area 2, and so on. As you can see, they don't line up perfectly, but the goal of this map was to align the trustee area lines with the attendance lines as much as possible. So up north, you have, Cappuccino High School all united in area 1, but that's not enough people to make a whole trustee area given the equal population requirement. So then area 1 comes down and gets roughly half of Mills. And the other half of Mills goes with trustee area 2, which has just about all of Burlingame High School. Similarly, area 3 is the kind of the north portion of San Mateo High. And then Aragon High gets divided while Hillsdale is in area 4. So that's one way of orienting where we try to concentrate each high school attendance zone in a single trustee area whenever possible. Next slide. The second map here, draft 102, shifts focus. So instead of focusing on the high school attendance zones, this map is really focused on each feeder district. So again, we get fairly compact. And again, the population numbers don't always line up to the point where we can actually follow the same lines, but we are trying to keep each feeder district in a single trustee area as much as possible. I should note that each of these are a certain approach of trying to concentrate the attendance zone or the feeder district in this case. It's a big debate amongst our clients of, do you want to try to concentrate in that way, in which case that attendance zone or feeder district is almost assured to elect a representative to the board. And that's a perfectly valid policy approach. The other question though is sometimes, and you'll see this later in the later maps, there's a concern that might lead to balkanization and one board member fighting for their school while another board member feels like they have to fight for their school. So there's no right or wrong answer to this, but following these areas is an example of what you can do, but it's certainly not the only approach. So if we go to the next slide, please. This is what we call blending attendance zones. So in this case, the goal was to make sure that each trustee represented more than one high school, and then each high school had more than one representative on the board. Kind of a way of reminding future board members that you still represent the district and make decisions based on the district, not just on the school in your trustee area. And similarly, making sure that the parents and voters and kids in each attendance zone felt like they had multiple advocates for them and listening to them on the board. So you can see in this case, we're really using in the north half of the district, El Camino as the boundary, where area 1's on the inland side, area 2's on the bay side of El Camino. And that gets down area 1, most of area 3. But then the population numbers force us to leave using El Camino as the boundary. And area 3 shifts over to closer to the bay and follows the railroad until we get down to the southern end of the district. where we had to follow other roads just for population balancing reasons. For example, the freeway coming across the bay. So a very different approach. Again, this is taking the opposite policy idea. In this case, we're trying to blend attendance zones rather than have each board member more or less try to line up and represent a attendance zone. And then the final map to show you is the next slide. This one is blending a variety of factors. So you see somewhat confusing overlay here. Trying to look at attendance zones, feeder districts, and more of a focus on major roads. So again, you've got El Camino High and a little bit of city boundaries as well here, being that most people know which city they live in, even if they don't have kids in the school district. So it's a very different approach, but definitely blends the trustee areas. So each trustee coming from this map would end up representing a variety of communities and feeling a representative of lots of different parts of the district. They are not as compact as the earlier maps, but you can see they are following major roads, attendance zone boundaries, city boundaries, other factors that make them easily recognizable borders, while still trying to keep individual communities and neighborhoods united. So again, we have El Camino. Once we get, El Camino is a boundary between 1 and 2 as they come south, then shifting over to the railroad, and then following attendance zone borders and the freeway and other major roads down in the southern part of the district. So the goal here is to give you 4 very different maps. If we go to the next slide, really to get the discussion going. So you can give us direction on maps you prefer, changes you want to see made to those. If you want to rule out certain maps, you can do that now. If you want to say, I like this idea of, say, map 103, for example, but can you show us other ways that could be done? We're happy to do that. These really are just a starting point for your discussion. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions or look forward to hearing your comments and the public's comments as well.
So we do have several public comments on this topic. Does the board have any clarifying questions before we go to public comment that they'd like to ask? Otherwise, I would take public comment, and then we can have a board discussion about the maps. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands that I can see. Okay, why don't we take public comments right now. Ms. Shockley, I see some people might have been planned to come, but haven't been able to come.
Yes, I am promoting Karen Vitucci. She's coming in right now. We did have 2 other representative members of our community who had planned to speak. We had a representative from the Black Parents Association, and we had a representative from the Burlingame High School community. And then for reasons outside of their control, they were not able to come kind of within the last several hours. That came up for them. So they wanted to affirm our outreach and our efforts to date and express their enthusiasm for being a part of the process. However, they're not able to be here tonight, but we do have Karen Vitucci, who I have promoted. So I will yield the floor to her, and I do not have any other public comments at this time.
Thank you, and good evening, Superintendent Skelly, Board President Hanley, trustees, and all attendees this evening. I grew up in Millbrae. I'm a parent of 2 Mills Vikings. I'm the current Mills PTO president, and I'm a proud Viking alumni. I'm here tonight because I feel that the CVRA is important to our district, as it helps prevent the diluting of minority voting power, which can sometimes happen in at-large voting elections. Additionally, I feel that this process will help provide representation in the northern end of the district, specifically Millbrae and San Bruno. I appreciate that the district has worked closely with our PTAs, PTOs, and other organizations to ensure that all members of our school district community will have the opportunity to engage and be heard, especially when it comes to our children's education. Thank you for your time and effort, and congratulations, Dr. Skelly, on your upcoming retirement. Thank you for all you've given to our district, and we'll certainly miss you. Thank you.
Thank you. What I probably should have done is open a public hearing, which I didn't do. So let me do that right now and open the public hearing that we are going to hold on this issue, and ask if there are any other members of the public that would like to make a comment on the presentation, on their review of the maps, anything else on this topic.
And we don't have any additional members of the public at this point.
Okay. Let me close. Mr. Land?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
It's a public hearing. How can they talk, or how can they request to be taught to contribute? Because I do see one of the hands raised in the pop-up, but I know we have a procedure for getting on the speaker list. So if it's a public presentation or a public meeting that we just opened up, how do we make sure that the speakers are allowed to speak?
Would you like me to speak to that, Mr. Hamlin?
Yeah, yes.
So our practice and the way that this was promoted and publicized is to have members of the public email the comments email. And so that is how we gather our speakers in both the public hearing setting and for public comment or for comment on agendized items.
Thank you.
Okay. Given that we received no other requests for comment, I'm going to close the public. I'm going to close the public hearing right now. So moving on to a board discussion. Is anyone who would like to begin? Mr. I don't know who raised hands first. Mr. Land?
Thank you. Yeah, so I actually have some questions for Douglas. Mr. Johnson, thank you for the presentation. One of the things that is of issue to me in the demographics is we've talked about different racial demographics and, you know, having a diverse board. And so where is there any demographic data that includes those areas that we've talked about today?
Sure. Good question. Yes. There is extensive data available. Let me bring one of them up. Oh, I think I can share my screen. So on the district website, there are full demographics for each trustee area in each map, and includes obviously the ethnic and racial data that we need for the Voting Rights Act compliance. But it also includes a wide array of other data, language spoken at home, limited English speaker capability, income levels. Let's see, I'm just looking here for the folder. There we go. Let me bring up a sample so you can see.
Mr. Johnson, can we promote you to a panelist so you can share your screen? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I think the staff have already taken care of that. Yeah.
He needs to be a co-host.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. So, so for each map, there's this set of data are posted online. So it starts with at the top with the total population numbers. So you can see draft 103, the difference between the largest and smallest districts is 1.74%, really close to perfectly balanced. That number needs to be less than 10%. So we still have some flexibility if we wanted changes there. Then we get into total population data. For the Voting Rights Act, the focus is on citizen voting age population. So you can see we have one trustee area. This map is 27% Latino. Area 1 in this map is 40% Asian American and Pacific Islander. And the other number that's often looked at is the majority minority total number. So you can see non-Hispanic whites, NH is non-Hispanic. Whites are a majority only in areas 3 and 4. The other 3, this would have 3 trustee areas that would be majority minority. Then we get into some registration data and turnout data that comes from the state that's surname based. So it gives you a sense of the numbers. Obviously anything based on surnames is going to be kind of hit and miss. But we do have both Latino numbers that are trying to account for a known undercount among Spanish surnames. The Spanish surname lists don't quite capture in California the full Latino number, but we do provide the state's official Spanish surname number as well. So those are both trying to measure the same group. Then you have other groups and estimates of the white and black registration turnout levels. But the other data gets a little more interesting when I scroll down. There's breakouts by age, by the percent of the population who are immigrants, the percent of those immigrants who are naturalized. Here's the language spoken at home, the language fluency data. You can see we get up to 24% in area 2 have limited English fluency in this map. Education levels, household income levels, and then we also have single family versus multifamily housing and renter occupied versus owner occupied housing. So on the district's website are all of these data for each of the maps.
Thank you.
So when I looked at the maps, I kind of migrated towards 102 and to some extent to 103, primarily because when I was looking at the data tended to give in those maps, larger percentages of Asia Pacific populations in the district, and also some larger Latino populations in some of the districts than I think 1 or 4 did, if I recall correctly, and that seemed to be one of the goals of the CVRA, is to try to bring those populations together. The thing that struck me was that there's a lot of similarities, no matter, once you slice and dice these into populations of about 50,000, there's a lot of similarities almost any way you slice them. Is that a fair characterization of how we're going to have to approach this? I mean, I didn't see that there was an easy way to make this significantly different than on a different kind of map than what you've given us as the 4 different models. I mean, you could tweak it a little bit, but you're not going to come out with a 75% Latino district or a 75% Asian Pacific district.
Correct. When I walked through the presentation, I talked about some of the kind of large community definitions of attendance zones or feeder districts. Within that, at the smaller level, while I was drawing these, obviously I was looking at where are there neighborhoods that are heavily Latino, or where are there neighborhoods that are heavily Asian American. And in all the maps, I was careful not to divide up those smaller neighborhoods and to keep those concentrations together. So, so yes, you end up with roughly the same, within a few percent either way, ethnic breakdowns in all the maps, just because under the federal law and under just good practice, we are making sure not to divide up any neighborhood that is heavily one protected class. So they do vary much more in terms of the other pieces of the puzzle that go with those neighborhoods as we build the trustee areas. You get kind of a more of a coastal orientation in one map versus another. Versus, let me see. So if you look at like map 103, area 2 stretches almost the whole length of the coast all the way down until you get down to Foster City. Whereas other maps have the coast in the Bay Coast in, say, 4 trustee areas. But you're right, in terms of the big goal of the California Voting Rights Act of empowering the protected class populations and making sure they have a strong voice in one or more trustee areas, the maps are all within a few percent of each other for each group.
So I was kind of settling on my number one choices as 102, simply because the districts looked kind of normal. Whereas 103 it has similar demographics when I looked at the statistics, but it has this District 3 that is just seems kind of out of place to me. I mean, it seems kind of enormous. I mean, there's parts of it where there aren't a lot of people living, I think, right. but it just looks stranger than, I mean, 102 has a big District 3 also, but I mean, it's to some extent it's unavoidable because that piece of land over there is part of the district and it doesn't have very many people in it.
Right, and I did tend to keep that together just because, as you say, there's so few people in there that if we divide it up, it'll drive the registrar bonkers. As he tries to divide up an area that doesn't have any people in it and doesn't have any clear definitions in it. So that is the real reason for generally keeping that in no more than 2 areas.
I have a question. Can I ask a question, Peter? Peter, can I ask a
yes.
question?
Yes.
On draft 102, and I'm looking at the one that's posted online, and I'm looking at the names of the high schools. That's not where San Mateo High School is located.
Oh, right.
San
Yeah,
Mateo High School is very much is in the north part of San Mateo, close to Burlingame. So I'm kind of confused as to why. Is that because students in the Foster City area go to San Mateo? I don't quite get that.
Correct. I meant to mention that in my presentation and forgot to, so thank you for asking. Yes, so the labels both online and in these maps are on the attendance zone. So they're not on the high school themselves, correct?
But the students, the purple area, San Mateo High School incorporates the purple area. So I'm not sure how that works.
I'm not sure what you're referring to by the purple area.
Okay, so on draft 102 on the website, the district website, there's orange and green and blue and pink and purple. So District 4, which is purple, San Mateo, students from that area, some of that area go to San Mateo, but yet you have San Mateo High School. I don't know, it's just confusing to me how this is done.
Yeah, so map 102 is largely driven by feeder districts. So yes, you can turn off if you're in the interactive map where you can choose different layers, you can turn off the attendance zones, and that may help clarify.
Yeah, I'm not in interactive, so
Oh,
I'm just on the website, on our district website that shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the locations. So I'm what is the attendance? Is the attendance area for San Mateo a particular color for San Mateo High School?
No.
Okay.
No. So the blue line, the blue out lines that you see across the whole district are your attendance zones. So yes, the part of San Mateo high attendance zone that is south of the highway
Okay,
in
I
Foster
get it.
City. Yeah,
I get it. I get it. Now I see it. Because those lines are probably the least distinctive. The roads are a little more distinctive. So, okay, so looking at those lines, that gives you what the attendance zone is. I don't think I was aware that many students at San Mateo High School come from Foster City.
Yes, it's one of the interesting things of attendance zones is these years are close to contiguous, but they often do combine students from different areas just based on the size of the high school.
Yeah, I think that I guess I thought that more of them were going to Aragon and Hillsdale. So that's interesting.
Linda, if you go to attendance zone and city maps on his presentation on slide 4, you can see where the yellow part is San Mateo High School attendance area.
So I should get out of, oops, I just closed it.
Sorry.
No.
That's what I would suggest, because I was thinking the same. I had the same problem.
Closed the wrong one. That's okay. I'm going to open that again, and then I'll have what I need. Not the wrong one. Not the one I wanted.
Let me just go
you.
back. If you're finished with that one comment, I'm told Mr. Rafferty, who did submit a request to comment before the closed session, wants to make a comment in this session. So I'm inclined to allow him to do that because he'd already submitted a request to comment. So if you wanted to promote him, Ms. Shockley, we give him 2 minutes to make a comment.
Well, I mean, you have my presentation and I hope you make that available to the public. But what I've heard from Dr. Johnson is really very unconventional. You did ask him that you were not interested in following school attendance lines, but none of these criteria really reach out to try to differentiate different communities of interest. There are parts of Millbrae that are very nice and prosperous and white, and there are parts that are not. Following city boundaries does not get you differentiated communities of interest. He does look at the demographics and the economics after the fact. I think that's a very nice thing that he does that some demographers do not do. But that's after he's drawn the map. That's not before he's drawn the map, giving you an opportunity to overlay your knowledge of the community and to try to find a way to empower areas that really are not very connected to the board so that you can make more informed decisions and so that they can, be engaged, because many of these communities come from places where they're not used to voting. And that should change. That's what equity is about in practice. And I just wish you would walk the walk on this and try. It's not going to be easy because these are not concentrated in a single area, but it's worth a look. You've said you don't want to follow school boundaries. Schools, after all, I hope you try to integrate them. I hope you try to make them diverse. And that's the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing when you look for a way to give a dedicated voice to minority communities on your board. You're sacrificing a lot, I know. So try to do it right and leave a legacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Just one thing, Chair Hanley, if I may.
Sure.
I do want to clarify one thing, that while I showed the stats in this presentation after going through the presentation, obviously we are looking at the stats all through the process, and we in our process begin by looking at the district from the demographics, and they certainly were not an afterthought at all in this process. As we're focusing on communities and the Voting Rights Act and trying to keep communities of interest together, certainly we're looking at those numbers. And I did look at, following Mr. Rafferty's earlier presentation tonight, at the limited English speaker data from the Census Bureau, which is the official source of that data. And these maps do keep each of those concentrations in the district together. I know he had the precinct data that's easy to get from the registrar. I understand why one would use it, but precincts are not drawn based on communities, especially in San Mateo, where you and Mr. Rafferty both know, you don't vote in your precinct. You have open elections, you can vote anywhere. And every vote center has bilingual ballots. So it's more using the census data that matters for keeping those limited English speakers together. And these maps do. And you can see that in the numbers as one trustee area ranges from 22 to 24% limited English speaker in each map. So I just wanted to be sure the record is clear that we are using those demographics and looking at socioeconomic factors while we're drawing the maps, not just after the fact.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
So one thing I might ask if board members have any direction, this is kind of a chance to reduce the number of maps if there was something you want to rule out, or to request kind of any variations you would want to see brought back to you at the next meeting.
Doug, if I could just add to that as well, another consideration on which board input is helpful as we start to put this together. Ultimately, the board will not only have to approve a map that will then go to the county committee on school district organization, you also have to propose the sequencing of the elections. And in San Mateo County, somewhat not typical of necessarily all the other counties in the state, you actually have more choices available to you because of the way that the county interprets this. So on each of the maps, you'll also see the sequencing, and we're happy to answer any questions about that tonight. That can get complicated in itself. There's nothing wrong with focusing first on a map that's preferred and then discussing the sequencing, but I just wanted to make sure that the board's taking that into consideration as well. And by sequencing, what we mean is which seats will be up in 2022, which seats will be up in 2024, with the understanding, and we always have to reiterate this, that every board member who's been elected to a 4-year term gets to serve out the 4-year term. So it's really how this will work moving forward in future elections.
The quietest we've been, quietest we've been. Can I'm gonna just give my 2 cents.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting because I don't like the balkanization of some of them, and I like the compact 103, draft 103, because it does give the opportunity of districts 1 and 2 to be diverse in certain ways, and also 4 and 5 in diverse ways. So looking at those. So in my mind, I like 103 really well. 104 is growing on me, but at first I didn't like it. I don't know, that's about it for me. I don't know if we've focused on the feeder districts. I don't think that's a good one, and I don't think I want to. The 101 is kind of difficult too.
The thing that I guess one thing that concerns me is that historically there's been an east of El Camino, west of El Camino divide in our communities. And it would be great if that, I'm looking to see which map does not preserve that divide, because I know Burlingame just is doing theirs. And the big an issue was that since the people on the east side of El Camino felt that they were never represented because everyone was elected from the west side. And that's in the economics of the east side historically. Now everything has changed greatly, but historically, the economics of the east side was never as good as the economics of the west side. So I don't like Hillsborough in one big lump, which I think is the number draft 103. I think that should be broken up. Yeah, because that's kind of, it's, yeah, with the west side, that creates a very, historically, a very affluent area, which I believe would be better. I know, I think people would be better served if we're more blended together than that. So that would be my concern with 103. 102 seems to do a little bit, does the east-west thing, but not, well, not really. 102 is a little better because I can see where there's more blending of neighborhoods that we don't have. And I know that's particularly significant in Millbrae too, and San Bruno, where you have the different, 82 as being kind of a, El Camino being a dividing line. So I think that 102 does really address that. I have to look back at 101 again. But anyway, that's just a comment.
The other thing about 103 is in District 2, when you get up to the north, where San Bruno and Millbrae, that part right now doesn't have, it's kind of the industrial area, isn't it? Am I remembering that right? It's not really residential up in that area. So your electorate is really down in Burlingame and I guess a little bit into San Mateo, but there's not a lot of votes up. I don't think there's a lot of votes up in the northern part of that District 2 on draft 103.
It's essentially the railroad becomes a divide. You're right. Everything from the railroad to the bay up there is all industrial and that kind of thing. There is some residential between El Camino Real and I guess it's a mix of residential and commercial between the El Camino and the railroad. But you're right. The bulk of the population for that trustee area is definitely farther south.
Yeah. Okay.
101 actually breaks up a bit of the El Camino issue. Just looking at it, I'm trying to, yeah, because area 2 is on both sides, and same, so is area 3 and area 4. So, and area 5. Yeah, which I think is really a good thing. That's not a bad, that 101 is not a bad draft for that reason. I think 103, it would be my least favorite just because of it creates this whole west side population, which is, I don't think, very blended with different economic groups, unless I'm missing something.
No, I think the only thing about 103 that I like is the fact that it's not just one high school in an area, because again, one of my biggest fears that I start, and I think I'm going to end with, is if you just have Cappuccino in one area, then one person represents only Cappuccino, and one represents Burlingame, and one represents San Mateo. And I think that is a balkanization that I fear, because I think—
Is that 101, Greg?
I think,
yeah, that's attendance zone. So does that happen?
101.
Yeah.
So 101 is definitely more based on that, and that's my biggest concern. So it's a little less than 102. And then 103 totally balkanizes, and it makes sure it has 2 high schools in each area.
103 does. 103 makes you,
because I think like Cappuccino,
yeah,
attendance area is divided between 2 and 1. Mills is divided into 3 and 2 and 1. Burlingame is 2 and 3. Aragon is 4 and 5. Or 4 and 3, et cetera, et cetera. So you always have like that. That's what I see in 103. That's my only.
Yeah. I like that. I like that also.
Which 103?
Yeah. I like the fact that it's
Tell me
And
what.
the demographics on 103 are pretty good too. I mean,
I'm not sure they are. Am I wrong about how 3 is incorporating that entire west side? Am I seeing that wrong?
I don't think, and my hand's been raised for like a half hour, Peter, but
There's
that's
that big
okay.
bulk.
But you're gonna have to wave
3.
at me, Bob, because I can't see your
Yeah,
hand.
no, I'm just throwing shade, as they say. But anyway, well, one of the questions I have about having a large area, and this came up talking about the west side or talking about, like say Hillsborough or, like the zip code. There's nothing wrong with that, in that the people in that group are perhaps, per se, there's nothing wrong with that. If I understand what we're trying to accomplish, because the people of that group may be a group of interest or a geographical boundary or something that is that part of the logic on going through these alternatives? Dr. Johnson.
I'm not sure what you mean, sorry.
Well, Trustee Lee Dwyer was talking about, all the people on the west side or all the people west of El Camino are all grouped together. And I thought when we were talking, there's nothing wrong with having large groups of, within the organizational size, there's nothing wrong with that per se. I mean, if that's a group, if that's a geographic divide that creates a group or something, and if they all have common interest or something, that there's nothing wrong with that, is there?
You're correct. No, there wouldn't be if there's a common interest. And you get this debate often between, as Trustee Dwyer was talking about, a concern that, if there's only wealthy neighborhoods in the trustee area, well, that brings a certain focus to the trustee. That also has a flip side, though, of in California, we have this correlation between high voting propensity and in particular economics and education. So sometimes there's actually, the activists like to concentrate that high turnout, extremely active population, so that historically lower turnout areas have more of a chance to win in the other seats. So you're exactly right. It is an issue that comes up a lot.
Oh,
I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to that.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
But when I looked at the household income, for instance, statistics across the 4 maps, they didn't vary very much. I mean, in terms of, I mean, it kind of is what it is in this area of the world. Yeah, I don't know that, you can create a low income district or I don't think that's going to be possible. And it just, in looking at all 4 maps, as I did, the household income on all of those maps didn't vary significantly. Am I right, Dr. Johnson? I mean,
yeah, you're exactly right. And the size of these trustee areas, you're not going to end up with a low income trustee area. They're just, everything is relative, of course, in this world. I don't know if you guys know my background. My dad was a teacher and principal in Atherton, and my mom was a high school teacher in Watsonville. That kind of spread, you got 2 different universes. Within your district, you don't get those 2 universes. You do get different neighborhoods. San Mateo between the freeway and El Camino Real is kind of a more likely lower income, less English fluency than in other parts of the district. And there are those pockets, but we've kept each of those pockets together so that those communities are united as much as possible. But when you start having to put group neighborhoods together into a full trustee area, yeah, there just isn't the concentration in one geographic area that would give you a rich seat and a lower income seat. It's all relative in this jurisdiction.
Peter, if I get my 2 cents in, when I looked at the maps, and there's just a lot of data, and and listening to other trustees, I probably don't particularly care for number 1, which just aligns the attendance areas generally, with the voting areas. But I thought 2 was pretty good. There were some good points, 2, 3, and 4. Although I kind of, looking at probably 2 and 3 are relatively, if I got them straight, because I got to look at different, look at my iPad to look at them. But within that, I think, there's pluses and minuses, but generally they're probably all livable one way or the other. And I haven't heard anybody, and I guess the good thing is there's nobody lobbying for any one thing, but where we're trying to figure it out, well, what's this, and I think it's good to hear the pros and cons. I just kind of wish there was more input from the public.
So on that front, we do have a JP Adams who's had their hand up for quite some time, and I know we have a process for doing that, but I think given that they've been here and now it's after 10, if this person really wants to speak, I think we should promote them and offer them the chance to speak.
Okay. Why don't you promote them, Ms. Shockley? They have 2 minutes.
Is this the last thing on the agenda?
No, it isn't.
We're halfway through it.
I'm kidding. It was a joke. I know we're in the first presentation of the night.
I'd say something, but it'd be inappropriate.
Well, we may be able to postpone one of our items.
I'm trying to bring JP Adams in. If you can accept my, kind of proposal to become a panelist, then you can come in. Okay. JP Adams is rejoining.
All right. JP Adams, you're now on, but you're muted. All right, they're still muted. Okay, here we are. You're on now.
He's still muted.
You're still muted. We still cannot hear you, Miss Adams.
Almost. You unmuted yourself and remuted yourself.
We're still not able to hear you, and it appears you're muted.
Try to press the space bar and hold on to it.
If you put your space bar on, you can just continue to talk. What's that? Okay,
Does she
perhaps
have the icon at the bottom with the little microphone?
Yeah, perhaps we leave JP Adams on, and if you want to, call me, we'll find somebody to get you so we can hear you. Still
Can't hear anything. Does she not see the little microphone at the bottom of the Zoom? You do, but it's not working.
I think if I can read her lips, I think she's saying the host has muted her, is her thought.
So maybe the host can unmute her.
I asked to unmute. What's that?
Maybe she didn't join as a panelist and needs to be promoted that way and not as a participant or whatever that is.
No, she's on the panelist. She's on the panelist list.
So I did promote her as a panelist and I've asked to unmute a few times, but it clearly hasn't worked.
I'm afraid she's gonna have to send us her comments, I think.
Well, let's there was recommended that we move her back to an attendee and then promote her again. We'll try that.
Okay, so would you like me to try to promote her, or would the tech experts in the room perhaps maybe
Tech
they should?
experts are doing it.
Thank you.
Any luck? Could she have gone away? JP Adams, there she is. I tried to promote her to a panelist. There she is. Okay, she's back as a, okay, now you're able to talk.
Hi, thank you so much for granting me this time to speak. I really do appreciate it. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, whichever side that they occurred on. I appreciate this time. I feel like there wasn't enough time devoted to the new racial equity policy. I'm not quite sure why. I feel like this policy that you guys wish to implement is critical race theory. I feel like this policy is racist. I feel like it's wrong on every level. I'm a concerned parent in your district. One piece of the PDF that was sent out says that you want to train, counsel, and teach white students and staff about white privilege and anti-racism. How are white people the only ones who can be racist? I think everybody can benefit from this information. Everybody, collectively, as a society, we all need this information. Also, how are we determining who is white? Are you guys going to be doing ancestry.com? Are you going to be doing blood tests? I thought that as a society that we were moving towards how people identify, not how other people identify them. This is opposite. We're a melting pot. We're all from everywhere. This is racist. Stop teaching hate. Stop segregating. There is nothing good about what this policy is bringing to your students. Please rethink it. I'm begging. Thank you again so much for giving me this time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, back to the maps. We need to kind of bring this to a conclusion. I'm not sure what that looks like. I do have a clarifying question, Harold. Going back to what you said about the sequencing, just to make sure I understand this right. For instance, on draft 103, if we went with the 2022 sequencing, where where Hanley and Zuniga are in District 4 and in 2022, that basically means Hanley can't run in that district, right? Because Zuniga was just elected for a 4-year term.
Unless you go to the alternative election, which puts you at the later one, then you'd have to run against each other.
Actually,
You can always,
if
you
I,
can move too, I guess.
But my term runs out this year.
so let me take an attempt at this, and it's complicated, so Doug, feel free to weigh in. But if you look at map 103, it's got 2 different potential proposed election sequences on it that the board will get to pick between. And again, this is a slightly unique to San Mateo County. Not all counties recognize the ability to make this choice. So in the first one, trustee area number 4 in the first proposed election sequence is Hanley and Zuniga. Hanley is a 22 office. You hold office until 22, and Zuniga holds office until 24. So in that situation, this is a 22 election. Under the way that the San Mateo County Registrar's Office looks at this, in 2022, Hanley could run for a 2022 seat because Zuniga is holding an at-large seat. She was elected pre-creation of the maps. What that would mean, however, is if Hanley wins in 2022, that in 2024, the trustee area is taken and Zuniga would not be able to run in 2024. So that's the first scenario. The alternate scenario is you put trustee area 4 with Hanley and Zuniga in the 2024 slot. That means that seat comes open in 2024. In that scenario, Hanley could not run in 2022. So it reverses who it is that can run when. Doug, did I butcher that too badly?
No, it's exactly right. The only thing I would add to it is if the seat's up in 2022, trustee Zuniga could run midterm. It's a little weird thing. So you could both run, you'd have to run against each other, is the downside, but it is possible to run midterm. I always encourage folks, it's a weird situation. I encourage people to keep those campaigns civil because the scenario could happen where, just using the names from this example, trustee Hanley, if trustee Hanley were to win that, trustee Zuniga would still be on the board for 2 more years. So it's a weird situation where you'd be sitting next to someone you just ran a campaign against on the board. But it has happened to my knowledge only once, but it is a scenario where you could run against each other. But that would of course require anyone who was just elected to run just 2 years after they were just elected. So it does get weird when trustees get paired who are not in the same election cycle.
Can I ask another question? Okay, and this may be just me, and maybe it's because it's 1024. But when I look at the 4 of them, number 3, the area 3 is really big on 103. Am I getting that correct? And I look at the green area is very large on 103. Where it isn't on the other, as large on the others. Am I looking at that correctly?
It's correct, but it's part of the kind of the visual misleading nature of maps, because that area west of the freeway of the 280 has essentially, I think it has less than 100 people in that whole region. So it is territory that's part of the district. So it has to be assigned to a trustee area, but there's almost nobody out there. So it's not like the board member would have to go trooping door to door over there or anything like that. It really is just an area we have to assign.
Okay, okay, now I get it. So no matter what map I'm looking at, that area west of 280 is very lightly populated. So no matter what group it ends up in, it's lightly populated. That's the reality of it. Okay.
Right.
It's the reservoir basically out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some people west of 280, but I don't think there's much of anything from what I haven't been up there much.
I think that whole region
neighborhood.
I think that whole region has about 200 people or so.
Okay,
that fast.
then,
No,
yeah,
that's
now,
just-
yeah, because I guess I was getting too focused on that area, thinking, on draft 103, it's just a really, really big area compared to the other size of the other areas. So that's why I was a little bit, that still leaves me okay. I see what's happening. Okay, okay. I'm still troubled by this on 103 with San Mateo High School sitting out there in Foster City, because you've also got it over there where it belongs. So I don't think on 103 that's it. Yeah, that's a little odd, but okay, I get it.
Yeah, and one thing we can do, we got that feedback about the high school names weren't where the high school site is. And so I had time to update the PowerPoint, but didn't have time to update the PDFs. So we can put the high school sites onto updated PDFs and get those over to you to avoid that confusion from people.
Okay.
We're just weighing in. The other thought, just from your comments so far, is if there is a lot of interest in the idea of 103, where we're blending the different attendance zones so that trustee is focused on a given high school, we can do a second version of that, maybe perhaps one that doesn't focus so much on using El Camino Real as a boundary, and bring that to you as an additional map in that same idea, if that would be something you find useful.
Yeah, because the El Camino Real thing it's a real situation of division in all of these cities. And that's, I guess, I look at the first map and it seems like El Camino is not such a big deal as it is on 103, but I would like to see it be less of a deal if we're going to, we're looking hard at 103. I'd like to see the El Camino be less of a dividing place for people.
Can I just ask, so are we trying to limit how many there are? Do we have to limit? Because again, I see the diversity of all.
Do we have to?
I mean, I would go with either not cutting or going with what Bob said and go 2, 3, 4. At this point. So I don't know where we're landing at this point, because again, what's our next steps? What's after this?
What do we have to do on the 10th?
So Doug, maybe I can jump in on that. So you have 2 more meetings coming up. One is on the 10th, one is on the 24th. On the 10th, you can, as Doug had mentioned, adopt a map that night. You can, or I should say, designate which is your preferred map. You come back on the 24th to officially adopt a resolution, because sometimes what happens when you adopt the map on the 10th, there's some cleanup that you give to the demographer to take care of, so that the final cleanup map comes on the 24th. All of that said, I've worked with plenty of school districts that by that 4th public hearing, which for you is on the 10th, you need to have 2 hearings pre-map, 2 hearings post-map. They're not there yet. And they actually use the next hearing to decide on a map then and there. And the resolution we prepared doesn't attach the final map, you pick it that night. So all of this is by way of saying you do not have to make a decision tonight. It's helpful if you make a decision on the 10th. You do not need to make a decision on the 10th. You could do it on the 24th. The one thing to be aware of is that the registrar of voters is asking that we get finished with this process basically by mid-April at this point. And the last county committee meeting that is likely to happen before then is April 7th, I think it is. So getting this done in February or the first half of March becomes an important time frame for that. So you don't have to make any decisions tonight. Tonight is really your opportunity to ask Doug the questions, to get the public input. And if you do want to see additional maps, this is usually the point, not where we're reducing the number of maps. It's usually the point where potentially we're increasing the number of maps based on the comments. The old ones don't go away. They stay out there in circulation because we want to have more options rather than fewer for everybody.
Is there any way we can have like a
I know it adds to our meetings, but a special meeting just dedicated to this. I feel like if we add it to a full agenda, I mean, it's 10:30 at night, and how many of us are
True.
really like sharp at 10:30 at night? I mean, I'm not. So after having, starting at 5 p.m. So would that be possible? Could we do something like that?
It's procedurally fine if you'd like to do it. It's really up to the board. As I mentioned, you have to have 2 hearings before the maps come out and at least 2 after they come out, but that's at least 2. You could have as many as you like along the way. And we've certainly worked with a number of districts that have added special meetings along the way to have more public input. We've had districts that sometimes try to set them during the day so they can catch a different audience than they might at night. Those are all things that you can give thought to.
I like Lehia's idea.
I do too.
Well, I think we spent a lot of time on it already. And
I'd rather do it another time. I agree with her because this is something we really have to.
well, I'm
talk
not
through,
suggesting
and I would-
we try to make any kind of decision on it
Okay.
tonight. I'm not suggesting that at all. Dr. Johnson, you mentioned you might be able to tweak around on 103 and give it a different look with different roads. I'd be interested in taking a look at that. I like the idea of 103 in that it does combine schools and gives the trustees responsibility across school lines. So maybe giving us a different look on 103 would be a valuable thing to do, and we can talk about it more on the 10th.
Can I ask one more quick question? I agree with that. The question I have is, I don't understand how Mr. Land and I could ever end up in different areas. And on like map 1 has us in different areas because we live too close together. So I don't get that little pink blue thing on draft 101 because I don't see how and it's based on attendance zones. Our kids went to the same schools, right? I mean, Greg, did your daughter go to
104 puts you in
McKinley?
different. 104 puts you in different.
Yeah, I don't understand how that works because if you look at the map, I mean, it's like a little bubble, but we're only a couple blocks apart. So, and we both live east of El Camino in Burlingame. So, I don't know. I don't understand that. So maybe at our next meeting you can explain that to me.
Yeah, actually, I can explain very briefly. One of the thoughts is as you can see in these maps, for example, 101, I try to keep the attendance zones together, but population requirements require certain attendance zones to be divided. That those kinds of choices play out through all the maps. And where a community has to be divided, what we say is it might as well be the community where the 2 board members are so that the voters have the opportunity to vote to re-elect or not re-elect each of you separately. But we're not intentionally going out and carving out an extra community. It's just where there has to be a
It
split.
wasn't just for you and me.
Yeah, because that's not that.
Yeah. I did want
That was something I didn't want to happen. I wondered if this was fair.
I wanted to echo kind of what Peter said. If there's a different way to do the approach of what 103 looked like, I like the idea of being able to have more than one school in the area, but is there a way you could demographically do it differently and try different streets and different, because again, that east side, west side concern is a major issue in not just one town, but many towns up and down the peninsula. So if we could try it very differently, that would be a great kind of alternative.
Certainly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna move on. We're at 10:36.
So Mr. Haley, we'd like to postpone the next item, which is the presentation about LCAP goals, and perhaps move, if we could, through the next section fairly rapidly, if we can.
Okay. Okay,
So we would move to M1, which is about construction. We can answer any questions you might have, or we'll entertain a motion that you approve this.
Can we just say thank you to Douglas and Harold for all their efforts before we move on?
sure. Thank you. Get some rest.
Are there questions or issues on M1?
Is there a motion to approve M1, the award for Aragon Transite Panel Encapsulation Project?
It's happening. I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Trustee Land, a second from Trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Andre Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
I vote yes. It's approved 5-0.
M2 is the same deal with Hillsdale.
I make a motion to approve.
Second,
Who second? Oh,
me.
Linda.
okay. Okay, we have a motion from Trustee Land, second from Trustee Dwyer. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Affirmative.
Trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
I vote yes. M3, award,
Approve.
okay, for Mills High School.
Second.
Okay, okay, we have a motion from Trustee Land, second from Trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga, Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer.
I'm going to vote yes, and I just want to make a quick comment. We have a very good process in place for the construction bids, and Yancey is working with a good team. And so I don't want anyone to think, oh, gee, they're just rushing along because it's late at night. We've read these, and this has been, this is solid work that by people that we know. So I wanted to share that. Thank you,
Thank
Yancey.
you.
Thank you, Yancey.
Yes.
Yes, and I vote yes. So that's approved 5-0. M4, consider the selection of Quatoki Quok Architects.
I move
for-
approval.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Dwyer, second by Trustee Zuniga. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer.
Yes, and again, this is a firm that we've worked with on a number of occasions and have done great work for us.
And I vote yes. So that's
Yes.
approved 5-0. Yes,
Nancy
we've worked,
Johnson.
we have worked with Kotroki for many years.
Long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number N, or section N, approval
Trustee
of,
Hanley, sorry, Yancy has something to say.
yes, Yancey.
President Hanley, I really wanted to thank the site staff, for the architects, the principals, and the athletic directors who were deeply involved in this process on the interviews, as well as the principals for all of the Transite panels. They brought great insight on what would work for their campuses. So I just wanted to, I think a few of them are still on online here. I just wanted to thank them for that. So sorry, we can move on, President Hanley.
Yeah, they're hugely important projects that we've wanted to do for a decade at least, probably more than a decade. So seeing them come to fruition is very welcome, to
And
say the
thank you.
least.
And thank you, Todd Lee, for sticking with us and still being here tonight. I see you on the list. Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, approval of personnel actions and addendum, Mr. Black.
Yes, personnel actions and addendum. We have this time of year, we have a lot of retirements and resignation, if I may. James Burke, English teacher, currently at Middle College, will retire on May 27th after 30 years in the district. And Tanoela Weppel, Italian teacher at Burlingame, will retire on May 27th. She's been in the district for 25 years. Cynthia Eagleton submitted her retirement effective on the date of January 10th, and she's been with the district for 23 years and 9 months. Barb Tufo, Executive Coordinator of Human Resources and Student Services, will retire at the end of the day, June 30th. She's been with the district for 26 years and 9 months. Susan Silva, payroll at the district office, has submitted her resignation effective April 8th, and she's been with the district for 10 years. Jonathan Lazar, chemistry teacher at Hillsdale, will retire on June 30th after being with the district for 18 years. Sarah Devine, our CTE teacher at Cappuccino, will retire May 27th after 19 years in the district. And Charles Olson, our biology teacher at Mills, will retire May 27th after 17 and a half years in the district.
Good people.
Yeah.
I didn't hear Kevin's name.
I mean, the facial letter.
Okay.
He changed his mind.
He changed his mind, yes.
Tonight made me change my mind.
Okay, is there a motion to
I move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from trustee Dwyer, second from trustee Land. How do you vote, trustee Griffin?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
I thought you froze for a second. And I vote yes.
Oh.
So that's approved 5-0. N2, review, discuss, approve job description for the new position of school social worker at Peninsula High School.
This is the position that we talked about earlier. There were some comments on it of appreciation. This is the school social worker at Peninsula High School that will do a range of services to support students and families and promote student engagement and help the existing staff at the school.
I move approval.
Second. Just a quick question. Is it more enduring than just 1 year, or is this temporary?
No, well, it's funded temporarily, but to enter the position, we would have to go through the normal process. We feel like it's going to be a successful position, and we'll find alternative funding.
So this is going to be
board approval.
Okay, ongoing then.
Yes, that's the intention.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Dwyer, second by trustee Land. Okay, trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that's approved 5-0. N3, I have something to read for N3. Manager of teacher induction contract. The following are the compensation terms for the manager of teacher induction and professional learning, a non-represented certificated administrator position at an annual salary of $169,999 and prorated for 7 months in 21-22 to $97,710. This certificated administrator will receive prorated health and welfare benefits up to $25,343, transportation and cell phone reimbursements of $275 a month, various subscriptions and memberships, and reimbursements for approved district expenses. So, Mr. Black, is there anything to add to this at this point?
It's just an approval.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the position?
So move.
Second.
Okay, a motion by trustee Griffin, a second by trustee Land. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So it's approved 5-0. Approve the revised miscellaneous salary schedule.
This has the added addition of a longer-term administrator substitute. This year, we have a couple of APs who will be out for long-term, and we just had a daily rate on the miscellaneous salary schedule before. This now is the first step of the AP1 position, which is much more attractive for recruiting purposes for retired administrators or substitute administrators for longer-term leave.
I make a motion to accept the schedule.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from trustee Land, second by trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. It's approved 5-0. N5, approve the memorandum of understanding and side letters between CSEA Chapter 519 and the district.
Okay, so the MOU is to increase our work from home day agreement with the CSEA from 15 days up to 45 days. This is up to 45 days. We don't foresee many employees getting to that point, but it does provide that option, especially given the situation with Omicron and COVID in general. The two side letters are for personal reasons of two different mental health therapists. One has a personal reason for a reduction, and the other has a reason for pursuing her doctorate degree. These hours will be backfilled, so there won't be a loss in services, and both of these therapists will be back for the next school year.
So move.
We don't need a public hearing on the MOU. No.
No, it's not a
Okay.
contract, no.
Okay. Good.
Okay, we have a motion from trustee Dwyer and a second from trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
I
It was
think it was
trustee.
trustee Zuniga.
Yeah,
Oh, was it?
yeah.
I didn't
Sorry.
make the motion.
I still vote yes.
Me too.
Okay. Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that's approved 5-0. Approve the 2021-22 single plans for student achievement, SIPSAs.
We're happy to discuss. We're asking for approval.
Adoption.
Adoption, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move approve. I'll move to adopt.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion from trustee Dwyer, second from trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. 5-0, that's approved. Resolution of the Board of Trustees. Let me see this. Designating a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for Measure L and Measure O and approving amended and restated bylaws. Therefore,
So this is just some administrative cleanup. We run those two committees as one committee. And this just clarifies that. There are no changes to either of the bylaws. They're just noting that we run those committee concurrently.
Great idea, Yancy. I move approval.
Second.
okay, motion by Trustee Dwyer, second by Trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that's approved 5-0. Board operations. Amendment to the purchase and sale agreement and joint escrow instructions for sale of Crestmore School Site to Summerhill Homes LLC.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment.
I second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Griffin, second by Trustee Land. Trustee Griffin, how do you
Yes.
vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer,
Yes, and I just want to add that we discussed this at length in closed session.
okay, and I vote yes. So approve the established graduation dates and time, May, June 2022.
Wow.
I have just the question on 5/26. There's 4 graduations like within, almost on top of each other. Are we sure?
I'll break it up. Yeah.
Are we sure we want to do that?
Well, it's just so much more convenient for families and for staff to do it on the day before the long break, right? Because after that, if you go Friday, you're going into Memorial Day weekend. So that's the catalyst for that decision.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a
I move
motion?
approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Dwyer, second by Trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes. Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Okay. Yes.
and I'm not enthusiastic about it either. Trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes too. Although I'll probably regret it. Okay, that's approved 5-0. Superintendent search.
He's here. We don't have to look for him. I saw him. I saw his face earlier.
We found him.
We
All right.
found him. He's not lost. Bad joke. Okay. It's 10:55.
So I had a email exchange with Dr. Black that says it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get out an RFP and get back proposals. So I think we should agree that Dr. Black should begin that process of sending out an RFP and requesting proposals for search firms as our next step.
I agree with that.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
He can always change his mind. Skelly can always change his mind. Get cold feet.
We can make it worth his while.
Is there anything else we need to discuss tonight about the search?
No.
Well, when they asked last time about, what the terms would be, so, we can get, like how much district help there would be, what type of outreach you want, how many community meetings you want. I mean, we can get all that those details to you. And then the last time you had, I think we had at least three of the firms after we screened them came in and did a presentation. So they'd also want those dates. I mean, if I say we need it in 2 weeks, they'll get me the proposal. Most of their proposals are boilerplate, and then they have a little bit about the district, and then they have these different options that you can have. So we'll get those. If you want to then decide which ones you want at a meeting as a proper presentation, a formal presentation, we have the 2 dates in February. If you want to give me those, give me which ones you want them to be at, and when are you going to go through the RFPs that we get in paper form.
It's probably, I mean, I think Linda, I can probably discuss it with Kevin, but it would probably be ideal if we could do it on the 10th, just to get the process rolling, given that, the early bird catches the worm in this process. I mean, the superintendents that are going to be looking for jobs are starting the process right now.
Yes, they are.
I agree on that. Yeah.
There's a lot of ads out right now.
I think my only concern is I would like us to have a wide berth. I'd like to get more than just a couple, because I know the usual suspects, and I'd like to see maybe if we could diversify.
That's a good idea.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, last time we went out, we went out to 8 firms, and but one or two of them aren't in business anymore, but we got 6 responses back. And then you brought 3 or 4 for presentation.
I think we brought 3. I think we brought 3. I'm not positive. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
That sounds like a good process.
That worked.
Yeah, I think we brought 3 in for interviews.
Yeah, I remember interviewing them. Okay, it's 10:59.
Yeehaw.
We can make 11. Is that a record? Okay, how close are we? Oh.
Okay.
We don't need to talk about the logo or anything.
No, board requested items.
Does anyone have any board requested items?
I think the flag discussion can go off, right?
The flag discussion done.
Yeah, I think that can go off.
I think the only thing is, the request by Lehia to have what we just did, the district area meeting a separate or primary bulk of the meeting.
We're going to have a lot of meetings.
It's 11.
So over the next 5 months, we're going to have a lot of meetings. So I want to reserve that. I mean, if we need to, yes. If we don't need to, I just assume not to.
My only concern is let's not pack like we did today.
Yeah.
The agenda, Mr. President, please.
Okay.
Well, we didn't have any options on that. That was kind of that was all because of not meeting earlier this month.
I think the meeting's over, right?
Yes.
Sure sounds like it is to me.
Good night, y'all.
My cuckoo clock just cuckooed. So that's the end.
Is adjourned.